Hey everybody, it's JJ and we're back again for another ASUS PCDIY hardware live stream. Hopefully everybody is enjoying their Friday and staying cool. It's definitely starting to get into the hotter temperatures, and I think on my side of the road, we're just cracked already over 100 degrees, so it's definitely going to get warmer over the weekend. So everybody, hopefully stay cool, stay safe, stay healthy, enjoy your Friday night and enjoy your weekend. But with that, we've got actually some cool things to be able to go ahead and talk about for this stream. We've actually got a couple of new product announcements that we're going to be jumping into, so let's go ahead and quickly take a look in terms of what we're going to be covering for this week. I've got some cool additions that finally are going to be rounding out our latest generation of ATX 3.0 series power supplies. So as you guys probably already aware, we've recently launched, of course, the Loki series. That's our SFXL base series power supplies. We've also gone ahead and already launched the Tough Gaming Gold ATX 3.0 series power supplies. And so now rounding out essentially the power supply refresh is going to be with the ROG STRIX AURA Gold series of power supplies. And then of course we also have our Thor series power supplies for those that are looking kind of for the highest end series, which go all the way up to 1600 watt and platinum and titanium base rating, that are also compatible with the latest generation 12 volt high power base connectors. Those come inside the box, but those are not ATX 3.0. But again, ATX 3.0 is not a requirement for either systems themselves, whether you're talking about motherboards or CPUs or graphics cards. But for those of you that are looking for that most seamless experience with the cable, these power supplies are going to have them. So we're going to touch on those models. We've got 3 of the 4 models that are actually going to be released. So here you'll see there's a 750 watt, 850 watt, and 1000 watt. The 1200 watt will be coming a little bit later, just like the 1200 watt that we're going to have on the Tough Gaming side. We've also got 2 new updates for those of you who are going to be looking to build maybe a little bit more on the kind of lower price point for a new platform, whether it's on the Intel or AMD side. So we're going to touch on a new A620 series motherboard. This is actually a follow-up to our 2 micro ATX A620 based boards, where we're now have an ATX based offering, and then we're going to be touching on the DDR5 version of the B760 Creator Wi-Fi, which is actually, I think, a really great option for those that don't necessarily need overclocking support for the CPU. You're just looking for a capable, solid, stable, and great looking board, which has some solid spec for prosumer professional creative workflows. So we're going to be touching on those. We've got actually quite a number of UEFI BIOS updates that we're going to touch on, some cool promotions that we have going on, and I think actually rounding out, I think 1 or 2 giveaways that we also have coming along. So we've got a number of different things to touch on for this stream. Let's see who we have joining us here. Erica, fantastic to have you here. Thanks so much. Letting us know audio is good. Always appreciated. The one, the only, man, Mr. JC. How you doing, man? Fantastic. Chair for JJ. You know what? I'm going to keep bugging the team on that. I think they actually told me that maybe they might have one separated for me, but I'll bug our product marketing team, let them know if they can finally maybe send that over my way. It would be pretty cool to rock an SL400. So we'll see how that goes. Kevin Daly. Fantastic. Let's see. My system has the power of the glacial cooling it. So yeah, if you guys are not aware, the glacial, that's a limited edition production board that we produced in partnership with actually EK. It's got a full coverage block. It's pretty crazy. So of course, for those of you that have those hot temperatures going on, you might appreciate, of course, having that custom water cooled loop configuration. So pretty cool there. Speaking of water cooling, we've got H2O Computers joining us. We've got Michael joining us. We also got another Michael, not to be confused with Michael from Canada. And let's see, we've got also Tech joining us. Fantastic. So happy to have you here. I think I also saw, I might have seen him. Yep. Sneff waving his hand there. Fantastic, man. Happy to have you here joining us here on the stream as well. So let's see what we got going on. I think we're going to go ahead and first jump into UEFI BIOS update. So give me a second. I'll go ahead and try to not bump the table there. I know that somebody actually mentioned that in the last stream. So if I do happen to do that and it bothers you, let me know. So give me one second to go ahead and bring up my notes here and see which we actually have in terms of boards. So the vast majority of these updates are going to be generally applicable to, I'd say, mature based updates. So they're not going to be a critical based update. So generally the way that we try to break them down for kind of reference would be that when you're talking about UEFI BIOS updates, right, you are going to have 2 kind of sets. You're going to have ones that are going to be maintenance, then you're going to have other ones that are going to probably be feature related, and then there would be other ones that would be critical. It's pretty rare that you have a critical UEFI release. An example of a critical release would of course be recent UEFI releases that we did for our entire AM5 series of motherboards in accordance with AMD's guidance for max SoC voltage. So if you're running an AM5 series based motherboard, you want to be running those latest UEFIs. But for the vast majority of other boards, really, it depends on kind of what you're doing, the hardware that you're going to be running. Sometimes you may need to be able to update for newer hardware that gets released. Sometimes you might want to be able to take advantage of a new feature, a new function that we may introduce. And can be situations, of course, where there are maybe improvements to interoperability, compatibility, compatibility, and that's actually a perfect example of one of the updates we're going to talk on today. So an older platform, specifically Z590, saw an update, and this is an update that we worked on in accordance with feedback from our communities and system integrator partners, where we were able to fine-tune additional stability improvements specifically for 40 series based graphics cards. So as now 40 series graphics cards are seeing broader adoption on the market, you're seeing more and more people integrate them into their platforms, and that would include older systems. So in some situations, for varying reasons, you might have to have a corresponding update. So in this regard, there was an actual update that was released. So let's go ahead and double check on the range of boards that we have here. I think it's going to be a few Z790 series boards, excuse me, Z590 series. We've got some AM4 boards that are also containing the new AMD Agisa update, which contains some security mitigation features. So let me go ahead and bring this up here. All right, so UEFI BIOS updates in total. Let's see, we're going to have a range. There's going to be for Q670, for H610. We're also going to have for B660 based motherboards, such as like the Prime B660 Plus D4. There are a few Z690 based updates, so Z690-P, take for instance. There is going to be some AM4 based updates. AM4 is actually going to have a good number of updates, so that's going to be inclusive of from B450, B550 based motherboards, and also some X570 based motherboards. So in total, there's actually probably about almost 80 boards that had UEFI releases, really kind of a mix across different chipsets. So I strongly recommend, if you're not part of our ASUS PCDIY group, check out the featured post announcement that I'll have up going a little bit later today, which will give you some insight in terms of FAQ. So it'll give you kind of all the ins and outs. If you have any questions regarding kind of UEFI updates, it's probably going to be covered there. But let's go ahead and show you an example of one of these updates. So here we've got the B550 Creator. It's a great board, still actually my favorite boards, and a board that we still actually produce right now. And especially with some of the recent refreshes that AMD's done, including the new 5600 X3D, I think a very solid platform. Although I think the 5600 X3D is a better kind of optimized choice for probably those that are going to be on the gaming side, right? So let's go ahead and take a look. You would just head over to the support tab. Once you head over to the support tab, head over to drivers and tools, BIOS and firmware. Once you go to BIOS and firmware, you'll see that you have a new UEFI. You can see right here, this is issued from 7/13, so just from yesterday, and it has that new AMD Agisa 1.2.0.A. So that is the latest. And again, for these AM4 based boards, there was essentially some pretty recent Agisa that's already come out in 2023. AM4 as a whole is pretty mature. The last kind of Entail updates were predominantly focused at helping to improve stability and functionality for USB. And so this is kind of just a continuation of that. And there's also some, like I said, security mitigation improvements that are also present in there. Very important that do keep in mind, though, that again, if you make an update from one older Agisa build to another older Agisa, excuse me, to a newer Agisa build, and you have an overclock profile, your overclock values may not hold in terms of their stability under that new essentially Agisa and that new UEFI, not because the UEFI is not stable, but because there could be changes to underlying auto rolls, to MRC, which is the memory reference code, and other factors like that. So you always want to ideally kind of compare stock to stock for one, and then from there you want to redial in your overclocked parameters specific to that new UEFI release. All right, so that's going to cover us, I think, for the UEFI updates. Again, I'll drop in the whole list. For those that I know that have on Z590 side, because Z590 outside of AM4 was also a pretty popular platform, a large number of the Maximus boards saw an update. So Maximus Z590 Extreme, the Hero, the Apex, the Dash E, the Dash F, the Dash A, the Dash I, the Prime, Dash A, and also the ROG Strix Z590 Dash A. So all of those boards had an update. On the X570 side, just because we also have a lot of X570 users, the Dash P, the Dash Pro, the Dash E, the Dash F, the Dash I, the Dash E, Wi-Fi 2, and the Dash F Gaming Wi-Fi 2, and the B550 Plus Wi-Fi 2. And speaking of the ROG Strix B550 Wi-Fi 2, I do actually want to go ahead and note on that model really quickly. So give me 1 second here, because we actually have it on promo. We actually have, I believe, both the Dash F1 and the Dash F2 on promotion right now. So if you are looking to maybe transition, maybe you've got an older series board on the AM4 platform, and you're looking maybe to get a newer specification board, or maybe you're still looking to build a new system, you know, AM4 is still a great choice with especially some nice price reductions right here. The ROG Strix B550-F, really nice option here, has been price dropped down, where you can see right now $166 for this board. Very, very nice offering. And then we have the newer variant, which has a few upgrades, including even Wi-Fi 6E, which is a nice touch on this board as well. And that one's going to be coming in at $190. So I would definitely check out those two options if you're interested. Also, that B550 Creator board is another solid choice. And then if you kind of want to maximize chipset specification support, as some people want to go with X570, we still have the Tough Gaming X570 series, which is very popular, which would also be sub $200. Some people kind of always ask too, that difference, why should I get maybe a higher spec B550 board as opposed to going X570? Isn't X570 better? And really what it comes down to is kind of features, functions, and spec. X570 from a chipset perspective generally doesn't allow too much of a differential experience. You can still overclock the CPU, overclock your memory on B550 in the same way you can X570. Really, I would say what you want to look at, though, is going to be things like the I/O, right? So an example is that ROG Strix board has actually a higher spec Wi-Fi solution than you're going to get on the Tough Gaming board, even though it's an X570 board, right? It has a higher quality audio solution with an S21220A audio codec compared to the audio codec, which is on the Tough Gaming board. So you have to kind of look at what is the features and the functions and the spec experience that you're looking for. Just because the higher chipset can perceivably be quote unquote better, or sometimes people will tell you just go with that option, it doesn't necessarily mean that might be the best choice for you. So take a look at actually what you're getting from the board and see if that aligns with your kind of recommendations on what makes the most sense for you. All right, guys, so that takes care of our UEFI BIOS updates. Let me see if we got any quick questions that might have popped up right there. Hey, Jürgen, happy to have you here, man. Thanks so much for joining us in the stream. All right, so that takes care of those quick updates that I want to go ahead and run through. Let's go ahead and check out there. And somebody is saying, what's in your cart? Nothing actually in my cart. I was actually just doing some quick checking for actually a community post that I'm going to be doing for actually thermal compounds. So why don't you guys let me know in the chat, how many of you decided to go ahead and upgrade your thermal compound, so your thermal interface material, versus the actual thermal interface material that might have come with your AIO cooler? So I definitely know kind of in the enthusiast community, it's pretty common to actually see users that they'll go out and they'll buy a nicer or perceived kind of higher quality thermal compound, right? And they'll spend, it can be a fairly kind of big cost increase if you talk about it, right? Because you're generally talking somewhere between maybe about 2 to maybe about 6 grams, somewhere in that range, and you could be spending 6 to 8 to 10 to 20 to upwards of $30 for the thermal compound, depending on the thermal compound that you purchase. And there is a benefit in terms that you can potentially see an improvement, but it's important to remember that there's a lot of factors that come with thermal compound, right? You have to account for the viscosity, you have to account for actually the lifespan, you actually even have to account for actually its pressure rating in terms of how it's actually designed. Some thermal compounds actually work better with certain types of actually heatsink designs than others, right? And depending on the actual amount of filling that they need to essentially complement, right, in terms of actually the IHS or the GPU to the cooling solution, some can actually be better than others. There's not necessarily a universal choice. But the reason why it comes up is, it's interesting to see as a manufacturer, we'll validate thermal compounds specifically for kind of an optimal experience, right? So that means that when you kind of get the product, it's already going to give you X experience. And I have seen situations where actually people can go and switch to an aftermarket thermal compound and actually go to a worse performing thermal compound. It doesn't necessarily always mean that you get better. So it's just interesting as we're taking a look at some data. I just want to know, let us know in the chat. Did you swap out your thermal compound, or did you use the thermal compound that came with your cooler? All right, let us know. Ghost Recon, I'm not sure what your question is as far as the X670 eHero. I actually run that board quite a bit. I've actually got the Dash A, the Hero, and the Extreme all here with me, and I have no issues with them. If you're running referring to the current UEFI releases, the current UEFI releases actually are very solid, have no issues. You can actually feel free to check our PCDIY group. I went ahead and posted actually quite a number of kind of proof validation measures in there, everything running smoothly. So I haven't had any issues. If you can duplicate an issue or you have a specific fault that you think needs to be addressed, feel free to go ahead and document it thoroughly and with consistency. And so ideally what I mean by consistency is try to make sure that you can actually duplicate it in a consistent fashion, and ideally first and foremost at a default parameters. A lot of times users can attempt to kind of extrapolate an issue that's defined on variability of overclocking as being an issue when there's the variability of overclocking, which can be part of the challenge, and that requires a lot of additional debugging. Regardless of that though, feel free to reach out to our service and support team and they can definitely assist you with whatever issue you might have. But like I said, if you're looking for up-to-date information, maybe go check out our recent post that we have in the PCDIY group where I've actually talked about the UEFI releases and noted on a few of those pieces. So let's see some of the feedback from the community right here, right? Michael notes, Don't forget to remove the plastic from the cooling body from the AIO. Yeah, so he's referring to the actual heatsink. Some people have made that mistake, right? They don't peel it, right? And it depends on the cooler. Not all of them do. So take, for instance, like on our Ryuo Gen coolers, they don't actually have anything there. So it's just a plastic cap, in which you remove the plastic cap. The thermal compound is already applied, right? So Kevin Daly notes, I always thermal grizzly. Thermal grizzly is a very nice thermal compound. It's definitely expensive. For me, I think kind of value proposition wise, I'm a big fan of MX4, MX6, Noctua. If maybe you want to spend a little bit more, I really like the NH series. Tech notes that they swapped it. A Facebook user notes that they swapped it. H2O Computers also knows that they swapped it. Jurgen says, I changed the thermal paste after a year. That's interesting. Most times, if you're talking about a good designed thermal compound, you can actually look at the TDS materials. Now, not all thermal compounds will actually release their TDS materials, and you won't find this for all AIO manufacturers that release the information. But most of the times, most manufacturers actually want to target actually a pretty long lifespan because it's in alignment somewhat with the kind of the warranty policy, and also trying to reduce the likelihood of having service and support issues related to the thermal compound. So many actually thermal compounds generally going to have a targeted lifespan of 3 to 5 years, if not actually more than that. So changing it after a year is really not needed unless you're in a very, very specific scenario. You do actually have factors that influence essentially the evaporative properties of thermal compounds. So the hotter the actual thermal compound runs, that can actually affect its overall lifespan. This tends to be probably more of a factor in very tight, confined spaces. So in something maybe more like a laptop than you would necessarily have on a desktop. And also even to some degree, how you load your CPU, right? Are you doing a lot of multi-threaded sustained workloads, which are going to run much, much, much higher wattage dissipation and therefore more heat? Or are you going to be running general desktop workloads and gaming workloads? That means that essentially gaming workloads will have your CPU, a thermal compound, run a much longer lifespan than if you were essentially kind of rendering heavily hours on day every single day for 365 days a year. Okay, yeah, thanks for that feedback on our PC builds. We're actually going to be launching the PCDIY YouTube channel again a little bit later, not next quarter, hopefully by the end of this month. So you'll definitely actually see some more build content and a lot more kind of build overview guides and different pieces of content. So make sure to stay tuned in that regard. Let me see, I change thermal compound paste weekly because I swap out cooler 3 to 5 times a week, depending on how many coolers I test, right? Yeah, that's totally understandable. I mean, if you're doing a lot, then, you know, you're probably not even using the syringe, right? You're probably buying it in a tube or in a bucket, right? Yeah, I mean, I think I have a couple of thermal compound tubs, right? You know, like 100 grams, right? Normal people, you know, they're talking about, you know, 2 grams, 3 grams, 4 grams, 5 grams, 6 grams, right? Is usually what most people are probably buying. You know, you're a super enthusiast, or you're doing a lot of testing when you're like, nope, I need 20, 30, 50, 100 grams of thermal compound because I'm doing a lot, right? All right, guys, but good to know in terms of your guys' feedback there. So let's go ahead and keep moving things along here. So next up, let's go ahead and just talk quickly a little bit about some partner news. So our first one is going to be from our friends over at EK, who have gone ahead and released an actual special edition, essentially specialized block here. And so this this block is specifically for the Maximus Z790 Extreme. It's important to keep in mind that the Z790 Extreme board is an EOL-based board. That means end of life. It doesn't mean that we're not supporting the motherboard. That's just quite common for special edition motherboards. It means that we stop producing them after a certain period of time. This can be 6 months, it could be 8 months, it could be a year. It kind of just varies depending on the board and different kind of market conditions, the run rate, and different factors like that. That being noted, EK does work with many of us, works with us on many of our motherboards to have essentially not just CPU support, right, in terms of a block, which is pretty much going to be for any motherboard, but actually mono blocks. And so mono blocks are going to be more complex. That means that they're going to cover like the CPU, could cover the VRM. This one's a little bit more elaborate. It starts to actually get into covering where you get actually support for M.2, the primary, the CPU, the VRM, and other components. It's also been designed to integrate into the Matrix 7 system. So that means you've got kind of that clean loop through to the GPU if you want to be able to integrate it in. There's a whole kind of kit and combination in here that's been packed in to this overall design. Of course, it follows the design language of the modern EK based water cooling components, and here you can see it actually built out in a full ROG based system, of course, with an EK based block also on the graphics card, and that's inside of our Hyperion, which is our kind of our largest high performance ATX based chassis, which is designed for up to dual 420mm radiator configurations. So this is currently I'm going to be on pre-order. It is an expensive solution, so this is really going to be for, I think, users that want to go for a premium look and feel for their system and the highest level of performance. Now, I do get some people that ask, is it going to be a requirement in terms of running a monoblock? And you have to remember that the actual VRM components that are on high-end motherboards are very, very high spec. And so their actual thermal efficiency and their performance is really, really good. And in the majority of situations, in actuality, you could remove the heat sinks and the board would actually still be fine. It can help to sometimes stabilize a little bit of clock frequency if you're really, really heavily hitting the CPU, or of course, if you have a hotter ambient temperature. But the reality is you don't need to actively cool the VRM. So a lot of times, what we see in the community is that monoblocks are generally kind of pursued by users that want a specific look and feel for the system, right? They want something that even kind of bridges more of the surrounding area, creates more of a cohesive look and feel, but it will provide you a thermal benefit. And having the VRM operate at lower temperatures can sometimes nominally help to stabilize the kind of edge case frequency scenarios. It's, again, not a guarantee, and it's not something that's required to be able to have a stable experience, especially on in a board like the Extreme board, which already has a very performant, very, very large, massive VRM heatsink. You guys can go check out the live stream that I did on the Z790 series boards, and I showed them all up close. Very, very large, dense heat pipes. They're actually multi-stage. There's a whole heat pipe in there, a huge amount of actually surface area. So it's not required, but I'm going to go ahead and drop the link in there. I think they're showing that they will be launching this by the end of August. So yeah, here you guys can see end of August. Again, this special edition block, and it does come included with a ton of stuff here. So if you actually scroll down, there is some really cool kind of design elements right here where they're utilizing the pogo pin connection to the motherboard. There's some cool elements like that because this actually allows you to see information such as the inlet temperature and the outlet probe temperature. We actually have built in actually a WB sensor, which is based on the motherboard, which actually allows all this information to be read inside of the UEFI BIOS. So this has actually been a hallmark feature of ROG motherboards on the Maximus size and the Crosshair series side for a large number of years, but the Waterblock partner has to actually design the product specifically to benefit from that. But you essentially get this increased intelligence, so that way you don't have to have kind of an extra flow meter or other items there integrated in your loop. You can have all that information cleanly essentially routed through and read back to you, again, either through the software if you want to load up Armor and Crate, or you can also go ahead and load up that information within the UEFI BIOS firmware environment. So all of that is built in a really clean, easy to use. And you can see right there, there's the integrated flow meter, again, the outlet temperature, the inlet temperature, right? This is pretty sweet, right? The integrated bypass valves right here. This is pretty cool. It just gives you more flexibility at being able to have different types of setups, configurations, right? So you can see right there, out or in, right? Gives you different flexibility, right? So that's pretty cool. That's something you're not traditionally always going to be able to see. So there's a lot of different ways, especially with a high-end kind of build like this, you're going to have some options. And here you can see the supplemental M.2 based cooling, and you also get the ILM kit. The ILM kit is also a separate accessory that normally you would have to buy, which helps to actually give you a kind of reinforcement in terms of how you mount the actual water block in place. And it's a pretty cool, it's very, very nice. It's a very premium based kit. And lastly, for those that kind of go crazy, really care about temperatures, you have, of course, compatibility for direct die, which is not always the case, right? In some situations, you have to have specific coolers which are specifically designed for direct die cooling. So overall, that is going to be a cool update from our friends over at EK. I'm going to go ahead and drop that link in the chat right there. Give me a second right here. Michael's noting, how is the white Hyperion coming? It's coming along, still probably a little bit away. I think probably at earliest, maybe late May, yeah, probably August. August is probably sometime, could be September. Of course, we'll provide that information once we have that information available in terms of its timeline, right? Somebody asking about if there's going to be an updated version of X299. So I wouldn't say that there's no plans, right? Of course, Intel doesn't have currently kind of a new updated chipset specifically for X299, right? You do have, of course, the latest Intel Xeon-based platform, which came out, which we did release boards for. We had the Sage and the Ace, and so those support essentially kind of similar to the high-end enthusiast desktop, high core count, high CPU density, more than dual-channel memory configurations, ultra-high number of PCI Express lanes. So if you're looking for a kind of a similar type of board, then I would look at something like those series of motherboards that we have. Michael notes there's no display. That's correct. There's no integrated display on that block. Okay. And HO Computer says he gives it a thumbs up. He likes that block. Yeah, it's a pretty sweet looking block. All right. One other update we have is going to be from our friends over at AData, XPG. If you guys are not familiar with XPG, that is kind of their gaming, kind of enthusiast overclocking related line. And they've gone ahead and made an announcement for some updated ROG certified memory. And so every time this memory comes up, a lot of people get really excited about it because it seems a lot of people want us to make ROG based memory. We have no immediate plans to produce our own ASUS branded memory, but what we do is we do work with partners. We have two programs. One is called the Tough Gaming Alliance. So that would be for Tough certified memory, so Tough Gaming certified memory. And then we have memory on the ROG certified feds. Now keep in mind, ASUS is the #1 validated memory partner in the world when it comes to DDR4 and DDR5. So just because it's not ROG certified doesn't mean it works. You can pick any memory manufacturer that you want. Kingston, Patriot, Corsair, Crucial, it doesn't matter, Gel, all of them will work. So it's not an issue. As always, though, you do have to account for things like rank, density, population, end user configuration, IMC variants. All of these things affect, of course, your viability at what memory configurations you can run. The cool thing about the ROG certified, though, is the way it works is kind of three things. One, there's an aesthetic kind of tie-in perspective. So we do actually have a design compliance guideline. So the partner has to work with us on trying to make sure that the look and feel of the memory kind of really complements the look and feel of the boards. That's one. The second one is there's going to be a specialized kind of optimized profile. So we work a little bit more closely with the team to kind of validate the profile and the memory that they're using to be in alignment with the design of our topology and also our auto rules. So our auto rules and our memory timings are essentially specialized parameters that we'll define by our R&D team on the motherboard. And essentially they can leverage that. And so you can actually go with more specific values. And the reason why there's a differential is keep in mind that like a standard XMP profile has to be made to kind of accommodate the broadest set of motherboards on the market. Some motherboards could have worse PCB topology, right? They could have a worse actually signal reflection, right? There could be a lot of variability from kind of one board to another board, and especially kind of as you go up in the quality. Keep in mind, like entry-level motherboards might have like a standard PCB design, and then you might have a higher end board that has what's called a mid-layer, or excuse me, a mid-loss PCB design, and then you have a higher end board that might have something like a low loss PCB design. And these things affect essentially kind of the overall kind of the performance of the signal quality in relation to memory. And so all of these things can be accounted for, right, when we're going through that RG certification program to kind of optimize essentially the parameters that are being defined there to be more in line with kind of what we've designed for. And so that's kind of the main benefit that you're going to get there, right? So that's a pretty cool thing. I think these DIMMs look really, really nice. I think we've had a couple of people that took a look at these, the earlier spec kit. The earlier spec kit was offered in a lower value. I think the newest one that now is available goes up to, I think, 6800 MT, but they of course even have faster speeds than that. If you guys are interested in this, I'm going to drop the link in the chat right there, but you guys can definitely check it out. A pretty cool kit of memory right there. Hey, Liquify Mods, man, happy to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us on the stream. Ken K, yeah, so as I noted, the speeds on those ROG certified DIMMs will go specifically, I think, up to 6800 is the latest model that they did go ahead and announce. They, of course, though, have faster speeds that are available, and our boards can actually do faster than that. I actually did already a whole bunch of overclocking results, and I released them into the PCDIY group. Overall, on kind of nominal average, if you're talking about single rank memory and 2 DIMM configurations, right, which is your optimal scaling configuration for DDR5, the vast majority CPUs and our motherboards are going to be able to hit 7000 MT plus. So that's usually not a limiting factor. Keep in mind, of course, there's always some variants for the IMC, the integrated memory controller. I have seen CPUs that can't actually even hit 7000 MT, regardless that the board can achieve that value. So you do always have to account that there's multiple things that ultimately affect your DRAM scaling. But overall, I think resonant to the design, the performance, the latencies, the PCB quality, the thermal design. That's something also not a lot of reviewers I really see talk about, but I'd be interested. Let me know in the chat. Have you actually checked your DRAM temperatures for your DDR5 memory? A lot of people don't realize that when you go from the default memory, so something like a true JEDEC stock-based kit of memory that will not run an overclocked profile, take for instance like this Crucial kit will run 5600 MT, the JEDEC certified profile from the Intel Port table, that's going to be at 1.1 volts, right? Most overclocked memory is actually going to be running at an overclocked and overvolted parameter. So it could be 1.2 volts, it could be 1.3 volts, it could be 1.4 volts plus. That of course produces more heat, and actually heat is not necessarily a friend in terms of stabilizing frequency, especially when you start to run heavier workloads across the DIMMs itself. And so I can actually tell you, after testing quite a number of memory kits, that you can actually you can see a pretty notable delta sometimes between some DIMMs and other DIMMs, depending on the thermal design and also depending on the voltage. So do you check your DRAM temperatures? Let me know in the chat if that's something that you actually do. Hey Vitor, happy to have you here. Fantastic. H2O notes is any AM5 DDR5. Yeah, so that memory would still be compatible. Keep in mind all of our AM5 based motherboards all support DOCP. So DOCP allows you to read XMP profile tables, but we have also, of course, full partnerships with all the DRAM partners that are producing AMD Expo kits, right? So if you want to use an AMD Expo kit, again, that's overclocking. So you have to be okay with wanting to overclock your memory. As the default port table for AMD is going to be 5200, and of course it goes down considerably if you go with higher density configurations in relation to Intel. Intel does a little bit higher in terms of being able to support higher DRAM dividers, even with like 2 DIMM, so 2 SPC, 2 DPC based configurations. Okay. All right. I think that takes care of us for partner news. So that goes ahead and wraps up that. Now let me go ahead and switch over here. I think we've got, we still have a giveaway here. So let me go ahead and bring this up here. All right. So this giveaway, 8 days left, guys. 8 days left for our worry-free extendable router Wi-Fi contest. Essentially, the extendable router, if you've never heard that term, pretty much all it is that a really cool feature that ASUS routers have, pretty much almost across the board, is the ability to support what we call AI mesh. That's essentially the ability to take one ASUS router and pair it with another ASUS router to actually be able to create your own mesh network. So you don't actually have to buy a mesh system. If you already have an ASUS router, you can essentially just add another one at a later date to even be able to offer you more coverage. And unlike a repeater, it can offer you significantly better throughput and stability. Now keep in mind that mesh is not really a requirement. If you talk about the overall coverage, a high performance router can easily cover 2,000, 2,500, even 3,000 square feet. You really only kind of start to need to go into mesh when you find that you have kind of last mile coverage zone or maybe very specific environment issues. Now we produce both. We have mesh networking solutions under our Zen Wi-Fi. We also have mesh networking underneath ROG now with routers like our GT6. And then we of course have our entire standard kind of performance networking line, which are our RT or GT series of routers. Ultimately though, this is a really cool giveaway. If you guys want to get on it, what is the prize pool? You can win a awesome ZenBook 14 OLED. That's a really cool laptop that we have. We're also doing 10 of our RTAX 86U Pro models. That's one of my favorite routers that we have in terms of kind of price to performance to spec. Very fast SoC, multi-gigabit WAN, outstanding features and functions that are built into the firmware. Of course, all of them support our ASUS router app for tons of monitoring, management, control options. And then we also have the RTAX 57 to 20. So that's a total of 30 routers that we're giving away. So I would definitely get in on it. You can see that you've got just a couple of things you have to do to be able to go ahead and get in on the opportunity to win yourself a sweet ASUS router. Why don't you let me know in the chat? Are you using an ASUS router right now? Have you upgraded to Wi-Fi 6? Have you upgraded to Wi-Fi 6E? Are you on dual band? Are you still on? Are you on tri-band, or have you stepped up all the way to quad band? JJ's on quad band, but that's just how I roll. I like to have my quad band because I've got a lot of different devices. Of course, also doing a lot of testing, so I need to be able to go ahead and check out all the different benefits that we have when it comes to quad band. And little inside tip, if you're not aware, one of the key advantages that you do have by going to more bands is that if you do set up a mesh network, having essentially more than a dual band configuration gives you the flexibility to maintain higher performance for your connected devices. The reason being is that when you talk about the way that a mesh network works is that it will utilize one of the bands as what's called a backhaul. Essentially, it makes a connection with that band from one router to another router. So if I have two bands, one band would be lost, and it would be given to essentially the router as a backhaul connection. So if you had a tri-band based router, you would still have then two bands exposed. If you had a quad band router, you would still have three bands exposed. So that's kind of one of the key benefits if you do go over to a mesh network. Now, one of the other cool things is that ASUS also is one of the only manufacturers that provides is what's called a flexible backhaul connection. That means that we actually give you the ability to run both a wireless or wired backhaul. So if you're like in my house here, I do have actually wired, I have wired Ethernet that goes into different rooms. I can more easily go ahead and connect two routers together via wired backhaul, and then actually I can keep all the wireless bands exposed for the best throughput and the best wireless experience, but I can still make a mesh network even though they're not using a wired backhaul, not using a wireless backhaul, they're using a wired backhaul. So just some little insight for you guys there. So Tech is using the RT-AC88U. That's a fantastic unit. Still AC, but 88U, really, really nice unit. 4x4 base configuration, so actually still some pretty nice throughput. You can still get, on the 5 gigahertz band, you can get a couple hundred megabits in terms of throughput with a really good wireless adapter. So still pretty healthy speed, low latency, and definitely very good range on it. Yep. Okay, so that takes care of us there on that Wi-Fi that we got going on, and I went ahead and linked that in the chat. So let's see here. So we've got a promo here for you guys. So let me go ahead and open this up right here. We've got a Back to School promotion that is going to be going on. So let me go ahead and drop this in the chat right here. So essentially, we are going to be having, let me see here, on our ProArt series displays, that feature our USB-C connectivity, we're going to be having 10% off or more starting off on the 17th, okay? And this will be at the ASUS eStore, Amazon, Newegg, and B&H, okay? I'm going to go ahead and drop the links in the chat. They're not yet active. Keep in mind, they don't go yet live until the 17th, and I'll do a reminder post of this in the PCDIY group. But the pretty cool thing about that is that we do have a really nice lineup of essentially monitors that do feature USB-C connectivity. So you can essentially start to look off, like I said, 10 to more than, 10% off on corresponding displays. So of course, with the USB-C connectivity, the nice thing is you can have a more seamless connection, so you can connect that to a tablet, a phone, of course, a laptop for a single display, and pretty much all the ProArt models that do feature USB-C also support USB power delivery, which means that you can also have power and display through that single base cable. If you're not familiar with our ProArt series of displays, let me go ahead and just show you kind of a one quick reference model. So this is the PA247CV. It's actually currently right now 17% off. But one of the really cool things is all of these do feature outstanding color accuracy. So they're factory calibrated. They feature 6 color access control, so more flexibility. All of them will feature multi-point ergonomic adjustment. So that's going to be tilt, swivel, height, right? You're going to get all that gold stuff. You're going to have actually more USB-centric connectivity. So they usually have like a 2 to a 4-port USB hub built into them as well, so that gives you more options to be able to connect your devices. I'm a huge fan of these type of displays that we have in our lineup, so if you really appreciate a color accurate display, then you're definitely going to want to check out the ProArt. One other last cool thing that don't forget about, on all of our ProArt series products, they all do feature an included bundle for Adobe Creative Cloud. So you can get like 3 months, right? That's pretty crazy, because if you talk about the relative value of, if like me, I pay for an Adobe Cloud subscription monthly, you could be talking about like $55 a month, right? So 3 months, it's over $150 that you can have. And the cool thing is that this actually can stack. So if you bought like a ProArt monitor, like a ProArt graphics card, and like a ProArt motherboard, just like in one build, right? You could be talking that, that's like 300, you could be talking a pretty chunk of savings, right? Where you could be getting, depending on the number of products that you buy, you can get close to like $1,000 of savings, right? That you wouldn't have to pay for subscription because you can stack them. So that's a pretty cool kind of incentive that we do have, that you do get that bundle. So just keep that in mind. All right, so Michael Braun notes, I got an RTAX89X. That's a fantastic unit, right? iScopes I. Question, if you have any knowledge where the Citra Pro TWS Pro canceled. No, they haven't been canceled. They're just still, we're still, I think, under the Yeah, we're still under the design validation stage, so should be probably having more information by I think about the end of Q3. There's really nothing out like them on the market, right? Where they're a true hybrid-based design, right? So wired and wireless-based products. So when we're actually ready to release it, rest assured that we'll post more information about it. Right now, we of course already have the Cetra wired option, and we have the TWS model. We just haven't released the Pro model, right? Which is essentially kind of integrating both of those into one single product. So make sure to keep it tuned. All right, very cool. So I think that takes care of those promos. And last but not least, let me go ahead and just bring this up just because I know that these have been very, very popular. So I'm just going to go ahead and quickly note on this. It's going to be our Ryuo Gen models. Is that if you're not aware, right, we have gone ahead and pretty much already launched all of the Ryuo Gen units. They are currently available. So if you do want to actually pick up the Ryuo Gen, the Noctua is available, the ARGB model is available, and the white model will be available very shortly. So probably within the next, probably like say 7 to 14 days, depending on the e-tailer. But you can go ahead and check them out. They have already started to go ahead and list not only in the ASUS eStore, but also on partners like Newegg. So again, if you're looking for the best of the best, if you want the best AIO out there on the market, it's going to be the Ryuo Gen 3. I mean, that massive 3.inch display, the new daisy chain magnetic fans, the 8th gen Asetek based pump, right? The longer cable, the 60 frames a second support on the LCD, the ATIS-64 license, which comes bundled with it, all that great stuff. We, of course, have talked about it, and I'm hopefully going to have a sample here shortly. I'm going to do a performance demo. I think the performance demo that I want to do is kind of show it off a couple of different CPU generations, so I think I'm going to compare it on a 10900K, 11900K, and a 12900K. Maybe I'll throw in the 13900K. So 4 different CPUs, let you see kind of what it looks like across all of them. Let me know what you think on the performance for the thermal testing that I want to share. My thought process is that it doesn't make sense to show full all-core stress testing. I know a lot of people say, it simulates worst case scenario. But the reality is, the vast majority of us don't use our systems like that. We use our systems for playing games and for general desktop use. And I think it's actually much more relevant to see what the thermal temperature performance is, whether you're running stock or overclocked, and especially even if you're overclocked, because the argument could be said that if you limit the thermal presentation based on an all-core synthetic workload, right, then it doesn't really show you what is possible under a realistic overclock configuration, right? Because you can't have those same frequencies when you're running a synthetic based workload, right? So I can easily run an overclock configuration on a 13900K, even on a 240 millimeter AIO, although some people in the community will tell you that's not possible. It is entirely possible, but it all depends on the thermal load that you're attempting to put on the CPU. So I think it makes more sense to maybe show a few different game engines. So you know everything we could do, like from Cyberpunk to Red Dead Redemption to Forza, maybe something else in there that shows kind of Far Cry 6. Far Cry 6 is pretty singular, lightly threaded, right? Give kind of some different balance so you could see the frequency response, right, across a couple of different game engines, from like lighter game engines to maybe some heavier game engines, right? But focusing, I think, on what you really are going to be doing with the system versus just saying, here it is under OCCT or Prime 95 or even ATIS-64, because all those are just synthetic, right? They're just going to stress it, and that could be relevant if you're running a lot of multi-threaded workloads, but if you're just gaming and just using your system for general desktop use, it's not very representative of what you're going to experience when you talk about the overall kind of the acoustics or even the temperatures, right? So let us know. All right. Looking for a little latency. Yeah, latency is tricky, with Bluetooth. I mean, that's part of the reason why we also still maintain our 2.4 gigahertz based models for kind of like wireless headphones. I still prefer having both. I lightly use TWS, and the main reason being is that, if you actually use TWS a lot of the research shows is that you can have a higher probability of having ear infections. You can have inflammation in your channel, right, in terms of the ear canal, right? And so it's healthier from a long-term perspective to where, let's say, more of an over-ed earphone, and really only use a TWS when you actually need to use a TWS. So maybe you're going on a flight, maybe you're in a more constrained environment where it's just easier, more comfortable for you to kind of use that. But in terms of kind of using it consistently, I would always balance out the sensitivity, right? And especially for gaming under more extended situations where latency is really a factor, I would maybe take a look at something like one of our headphones that actually uses a 2.4 gigahertz USB-C adapter, right, for the best stability and the lowest latency compared to Bluetooth. Although we again do have models that have low latency mode support, as well as support the latest generation Bluetooth codecs for that low latency experience. But there is definitely a balancing act in that regard. Okay. All right, so that takes care of us, I think, in terms of those updates. All right, so let's get ready to go ahead and jump into some of the new products, guys. So give me a second here. And we're going to go into it. So I think the first one is we're going to go into the motherboards, and we'll talk on those guys. So let's go ahead and first just go, I think, on the entry-level side. So give me 1 second here. Let me load this board up. And we'll bring this model up here. All right. So first up we're going to have here is going to be the Prime series motherboard. This is going to be the Prime A620 Plus Wi-Fi. And so if you're not familiar, right, AMD currently for the AM5 lineup does have the highest end-based chipset, which is going to be X670, X670E, then B650E and B650, and then recently they released, of course, the A620 series. A620 is the most entry-level series, but it's a solid foundation. If you're just looking to be able to build a turnkey system, can still be entirely used for gaming, general productivity, really for kind of anything. The main differential is really going to kind of be in some of the more advanced specification support, especially when you compare it to like B650E, X670E. You really get tons of additional kind of PCI Express lanes available to you because, of course, there's dual chipsets. And with those dual chipsets, you can have things like multiple M.2 SSDs that support PCI Express Gen 5. You can have more PCI Express Gen 5 slots on the motherboard. There's even more rich and robust I/O. But if we take a look here, you're still going to be able to get Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth, internal USB-C, PCI Express Gen 4 for your M.2 SSDs and for your graphics are all built on board, and you get support for the current generation AM5 CPUs and the future CPUs that AMD will release. The VRM here is going to be a more entry-level VRM based design, but still it's going to be solid and reliable for the vast majority of users when they are running a CPU configuration, kind of with the intended use case right here. So I would recommend this for something like a Ryzen 7600, 7700, just using that with the basic tower heatsink, something like a Thermalright BA120, or even the standard inbox cooler that actually comes with those models would be entirely fine. If we take a look at the overall kind of configuration, right, it's going to be straightforward. You're going to have 4 slots right here. Keep in mind that AM5 is exclusively DDR5, no DDR4 support. You get your internal USB-C header, your legacy USB 3 header, 4 SATA ports that are going to be on here, M.2 and another M.2. It being a more entry board, there's no M.2 heatsink here, so it is something you would want to account for. Of course, though, probably this being a more entry, you're probably going for a more basic, maybe something like a PCI Express Gen 3 or PCI Express Gen 4 NVMe based drive that doesn't require a dedicated thermal heatsink. If you buy a higher performing drive, it'll probably come with its own heatsink, so it's not an issue, but that is something to keep in mind in that respect. In terms of the rest of your expansion slots, you can see that you actually have a lot of supplemental connection here, slots for enhancement. So if you want to be able to put in something like a secondary add-in card, a capture card, sound card, different items like that, you have that flexibility. You can go that route, so very straightforward. When we take a look at the rear I/O, you've got your HDMI display port, USB Type-C, USB Type-A, 2 high-speed USB 3. You got a legacy PS2 combo port, so for a keyboard and for mouse. Some people might wonder, why are you still using that? And part of the reason why is these models tend to still be kind of sometimes adopted by institutions, commercial businesses, military, different environments that might still have legacy peripheral requirements. And that's why sometimes on still some of these models, especially on the entry models, not on the high-end models, you're going to see these type of still sometimes legacy quote-unquote I/O connections, if you're wondering. Then 2 more Type A ports, your Gigabit Ethernet, and then your Wi-Fi 6, which also includes Bluetooth, and then your standard multi-channel audio out. So that is going to cover us for the Prime A620 Plus Wi-Fi. Again, I think a perfect choice if you want to pair this up with something like a 7600, a 7700. You still do also have ARGB connectivity on here, so even though this board doesn't have any integrated lighting, it does have headers right over here. So if we take a look, you are going to have 2 ARGB headers, and you can multiplex those. So if you use like a simple splitter cable, you can easily run 3, 4, 5 ARG devices per header. The only difference is that you just have to keep in mind that when you use a splitter cable or a hub, it's going to mirror the RGB signal from that header, so it doesn't treat it as a unique based item, which is fine because most of the time you're going to want the same signal for like all the fans to be the same, right? So you don't need to have individual control for each one of the fans. And even though this is a little bit more entry-level model, you still have a dedicated AIO pump header, but this model doesn't have dual CPU fan headers like you're going to see on many ASUS models where they have a CPU and CPU OPT. But keep in mind, again, you can on a CPU fan header or on something like if we go down here, like a chassis fan header, you can go ahead and multiplex out the chassis fan header. So like that header right there, you could put again a splitter on there and you could run 2, 3, 4 fans on one single header without any issues. Okay, so that is going to be the Prime A620 Plus Wi-Fi coming in at 140. All right. Kevin Neely, I love these bare bones motherboards. Yeah, Kevin, if you guys haven't checked out, he's got actually a really cool number of builds that he's posted actually in our PCDIY group, where he's actually taken quite a number of, I'd say, like our Prime Series boards, built up some basic kind of general productivity boxes, some gaming boxes, you know, and again, I give you a really interesting thing that sometimes people aren't aware of. A subtle kind of benefit, but it's kind of a cool benefit if you're somebody that really cares about post speed, is that entry-level motherboards tend to post faster than high-end motherboards. And sometimes this can be a little bit counterintuitive because people goes, well, the most expensive should be quote-unquote the best, right? The challenge is that when you go to a more expensive motherboard, you have more secondary controllers, right, that can be on the motherboard, right? You have maybe more redrivers that could be on there. There could be more quick switches. There could be auxiliary controllers that are also on the motherboard. All of these things influence the post time. So simpler motherboards actually tend to have the fastest post times because there's just less that the motherboard has to initialize when it's powering on. So if you sometimes want the quickest post experience, consider a less complicated motherboard. So a little subtle thing for those that care. It is kind of cool to know. So there you go. All right, next up, we've got another update here on the motherboard side, and that is going to be with our ProArt series of motherboards. So let me go ahead and bring this one up. This is going to be a ProArt series based motherboard. So give me one second here, and I'll bring this one up here. And let me guys know, do you guys actually benchmark your post time? Is that something you guys do? If you're wondering, actually, a cool application that lets you actually benchmark your post time is Passmark. Uses utility, has a utility actually, excuse me. I like to use it. It's called Passmark Rebooter. And actually, it's a great way to actually test kind of system functionality. If you're looking kind of for anomalies, if you want to be able to kind of easily test your system in a couple of different ways, like you just want to kind of keep rebooting it, checking the actual time that it takes to actually boot, and find out sometimes a stability test. If you just want to kind of see consistency, you can try this program out. So I'll link this to you right here. It's called Rebooter. It's a free program, right? And so you can actually dial in the value, actually when you want it to refresh. So you could go like, hey, I want it to reboot every 30 seconds, or I want it to reboot every 60 seconds. So as part of like when I do my UEFI validation test, I'll let you guys know, I'll run the motherboard through a rebooter test of at least usually 15, if not 30 reboots. So it has to actually consistently pass that actually cycle. And it's just a good way to test things. It's also a nice kind of mechanism if you want to easily be able to reboot and maybe run another batch script. So you could have run like a quick stability test or a mem test and then reboot and then rerun it again. Reboot and then rerun it again, and reboot and rerun it again. So it's a cool little utility. Like I said, it's free. Doesn't cost you anything. If you're looking for an easy way to consistently be able to reboot your system, you can check it out. Passmark Rebooter. All right. Let me go ahead and drop that there in the check. So Kevin Dilly goes, I have a Prime base build coming up soon for a coworker utilizing a Prime B760M Prime, the Prime AP201, and a Dual 460i, all white build. Oh, that sounds fantastic. That sounds like my kind of build. You know, just kind of cool, compact, nice, clean theme in terms of the aesthetic, right? And not not complicated, right? So I'm looking forward to that, man. It's going to be a cool build. Thanks so much for sharing that, man. All right. So next up here, we're going to have our B760 Creator Wi-Fi. This is one of my favorite series that we have. Of course, if you guys are not aware, we have quite a number of different models and series of motherboards. So under the motherboard lineup, we have our gaming lineup, right? So that's going to be ROG. So that could be, of course, Intel or AMD, but if we just say Intel, which this is an Intel series motherboard, right? You had a ROG Maximus, that's our flagship series. We then have ROG Strix, that's going to be our mid-range enthusiast, and then we have Tough Gaming, which is going to be our entry gaming product line. So that's 3 products already there in terms of kind of 3 different series. We then have our general series of products, so that's going to be the Prime series. We then have our professional, which is going to be the WS series, and then we have kind of our prosumer professional, which is going to be with the ProArt series. So you can see quite a number of different series of motherboards. Technically, we also have our CSM and commercial, right, which you could kind of weave in there as well. So actually quite a number of different motherboard series. I absolutely love the design aesthetic that we have on our Prime series. ProArt, Tough Gaming, ROG Strix, but I know a lot of people really like the refined design aesthetic that the ProArt series have with that gold subtle accent there, and then the black throughout, and then these nice little kind of design points that we have here with like the translucent IO shroud and things along those lines. So nice kind of just base set of specifications here, right? Just clean performant VRM, which is going to give you efficiency and reliability. Even if you go with a higher end CPU, you don't have to have any issues. Keep in mind, B series chipset's not going to give you any overclocking support for the CPU. You can run overclocked memory, so if you want to be able to run, 6600, 7000, 7200 based DDR5 memory kits, that's entirely possible. You do actually have reinforced slots, which actually helps to improve the overall stability and the insertion consistency when it comes to actually DDR5 modules, and there can be a little bit more sensitivity there, so it's important to have that. This is something that you won't see on more entry-level motherboards. You might not notice it, but you can actually go check it, whether or not they actually feature reinforcement. It has 60-watt charge support here for the actual internal USB-C. You have your legacy USB 3 there. You got your 4 SATA ports. You then have got 1, 2, 3, so 3 M.2 that's going to be on the motherboard. Now, B760 is not going to give you PCI Express Gen 5 M.2 SSD support, but you do get PCI Express Gen 4, and the primary PCI Express slot is going to be PCI Express Gen 5. So if you're only using the integrated graphics, an example of this might be somebody doing like AutoCAD, or using an application that's predominantly using the CPU and you're just using the integrated graphics core. You could still actually put a PCI Express Gen 5 M.2 SSD in an add-in card and run it in a slot like that. So that is still an option. You have also Thunderbolt 4 support, along with USB 4 support via the actual header that we have actually on the motherboard, and you have an integrated IO shield, lots of IO connectivity on there. So you got 4 ports right there, 6 ports, 7 ports, and 9 ports. So 9 ports in total on the rear. Wi-Fi 6 with Bluetooth 5, 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, and a 1 gigabit Ethernet on there. So you could split that up to like have local LAN and then like external LAN, right? Or you could connect it to a NAS or a type of SAN configuration. So a lot of flexibility right there with having the dual LAN configuration. This also does support our ASUS Control Center Express, which is a form of like out-of-band management, which means you could have the ability to actually remotely monitor the system. You could actually see how it's running. So you could be running something, go away, and actually be able to kind of see your system, how it's actually working in terms of temperatures and other data points through the actual web-based interface. No applications are required or anything special like that. It all works directly through the NIC. It's pretty sweet. It's a specialized kind of form of out-of-band management, which we offer on the ProArt series base of motherboards. It's a pretty cool feature and functionality that we have there. I think I went through most of the other kind of standard features and functions on there. But again, I think it's a great looking board, really nice, clean aesthetic. So if you're looking for something, like I said, not super expensive, I think this is going to be a nice choice for you to consider. I would probably pair this something with maybe like a 13600, 13700, or you could again go with the 13900. There's no technical limitation in terms of you being able to run it. It just probably wouldn't make sense to put a K-series CPU here because of course the K-series, one of the key benefits is that they support overclocking, and the B-series chipset does not support overclocking the CPU. Okay, for those that are wondering, I would also probably consider that probably by the end of this month, we will also be launching the ProArt series base of graphics cards and the channel. So if you're looking for a complementary graphics card, I think the dual series would look great. So we have the dual series. You could consider something like the dual 4060, 4060 Ti, the 4070, all be great cards. They're very cool, compact. They look great and they complement the look and feel. Of course, the ProArt cards even further complement the look here. And we have that, of course, based in the 4070 Ti and the 4080. And then later on in Q3, we will have, of course, the ProArt LC cooler. Now, the ProArt LC cooler really isn't something you would necessarily need to use on this type of model. It would probably make more sense to use on like the X670E ProArt, or on the ProArt Z790, just because those would be supporting unlocked CPUs and the highest kind of CPUs in terms of core count to power output and heat output, right? And that type of cooler would really be sensible here. For a build like this, I would probably just go with a nice performant, tower heatsink, maybe something like a deep cool, AK series, like an AK 500 or 400 dark, something like that, I think, or a BA series cooler from Thermalright, or of course a Noctua series cooler. I really love the U12 or the U14. U14 I'm a really big fan of. I really like the U14, but sometimes it's a little bit taller than sometimes some chassis allow for. So that is going to be the ProArt series. All right. And just to recap there on pricing, let's quickly just go ahead and show you our price points that we have again for both those models. So the ProArt is going to be coming in at $249, right? And then the Prime is going to be coming in at $139, all right? So essentially $250 or $140 for those two models, all right? So next up, let's go ahead and take a look at our new power supplies. Let me go ahead and see here. Facebook user notes is I like the Prime boards. Vitor notes is I like the ProArt. Yeah, thank you very much. Hey, Kandachi, right? So when it comes to that, it's a little bit complicated. We have already implemented actually different types of kind of back-end protection mechanisms. Well, not protection, but let's say mitigating types of features into our ASUS store when it comes to kind of scalping. So we actually have kind of certain mechanisms that if the site gets actually kind of scraped or kind of pinged too heavily, can actually block those IPs. There's other kind of things that we've implemented. We don't have like a specialized like queuing system or like that. It's something that we're still looking at. It is a much more expensive type of system kind of put in place for that. I would recommend that if that's something you really want to see, you can definitely continue to let our team know, but I would reach out to the e-tail partners that you're looking at. So whether that's Newegg or Amazon or other partners, because that's up to them to be able to offer that type of functionality if you feel that's important to you in terms of how you want to be able to purchase those type of products. But we have already kind of upgraded our backend to be able to offer that. We've had that actually for some time, and we're going to continue to always try to look at areas that we can do to improve upon that experience, right? So that is something that we'll continue to kind of be cognizant of and make improvements, when and where possible, okay? Remus notes is so happy to see the B760 Wi-Fi was made. Thank you so much, Remus. Very happy. Yeah, I know that you've been a fan of our ProArt series model, and I know that I think you had kind of sometimes maybe been adding Wi-Fi, so you're happy to finally see it just kind of get integrated natively on the motherboard. So yes, I would definitely agree, right? Debarkus, that's an anomaly actually, I think, within the streaming software platform that we use that I'll have to take a look at it. I haven't kind of had the chance to kind of just sit down and look at it. There's an anomaly, I think, within the rendering path. I don't see those images on my side. It's just the way that the actual restream service is actually working when it re-outputs the cursor, okay? So Remus goes, says, I have used that board with plenty of i7 and i9 series CPUs. Yeah, so again, you guys don't have to have any concerns. If you want to be able to run higher CPUs, the power delivery design is considerably over spec there. It's very thermally efficient, and it's going to offer stability and reliability for long, consistent workloads. So again, you could run a 13600, 13700, 13900, no problems on that motherboard. It's going to run all day long without any issues. A great choice. And again, if you want more robust overclocking support, you could shift over and you could consider the ProArt Z790 base model for those that are looking for essentially even more performance. All right, so let's go ahead and now take a look at the latest generation power supplies that we got here. So let me bring this one up here. This is going to be the ROG STRIX AURA series. All right, so we got this power supply up here. Give me 1 second. Make a quick banner for this, guys. Sorry about that. All right, so we've got the ROG STRIX Gold Aura ATX 3.0 power supplies. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly first recap on the actual models that we're going to be offering. So in terms of the models that you're going to see available, we'll be launching with first a 750 watt. We're also going to have a 850 watt and then we'll also have a 1000 watt. Now later on, we will also have a 1200 watt, but the 1200 watt initially will not be available. So it won't be part of these first 3 models that are coming out. It'll probably be coming out in the same time frame when we launch the 1200 watt for the Tough Gaming Gold series. Okay, so both of those are ATX 3.0 series models. They're both outstanding units. You know, when it comes down to like, hey, why would you want that? I'm going to talk about some of the differential and some of the value points you're going to get. But I really do think that the Tough Gaming series is a very, very strong value, and it's actually quite hard to beat. If you especially even compare them against many other power supplies, they already feature some really nice things, like they're going to have a premium PCB coating, high quality dual ball bearing based fans. They're integrated cables, I think, are the best cables on the market. Nobody is offering better in quality cables than already what's offering on the Tough Gaming Gold series. And these are going to be similar in terms of having some really nice, clean, malleable, flexible, high quality kind of semi-wax based cables. They're really, really nice that come included with these units, but there are going to be some additional value points. So let's get ready to go ahead and dive into what we've got here for these models. So we're going to first go ahead and take a look at the design. So in terms of the overall design aesthetic, the model is going to be consistent across all of these in terms of how they look. So whether you're looking at the 750 watt, the 850 watt, 1000, or even the future 1200 watt, they're all going to look the same. They all have this beautiful aluminum housing, and the aluminum housing actually not only works to really provide kind of a premium feel to it, but it actually also serves as an indirect heat sink for the actual internal components to be able to provide some additional thermal dissipation performance. It's got this really cool kind of honeycomb mesh pattern that goes around the power supply itself, along with the integrated ARGB lighting. So that ARGB lighting can be fully synchronized and controlled. So you do have that flexibility that you can go ahead and synchronize it with your ASUS components and your ASUS system, right? Through, of course, Armory Crate. It has the connection just like the Thor model, where you have the ARGB cable, which connects through a 3-pin based connection, and you're good to go. You can see that you can adjust the orientation there. So the orientation on one side or the other, depending on how you want to go with that, gives you some flexibility there. All right. In terms of the rear connections, very straightforward, right? Again, this is an ATX 3.0 based power supply, so you're going to have the integrated 12-volt high power connector. That's that ARGB cable, which comes included inside the box. This also does come included with some nice high quality hook and loop fasteners. So if you want to have some nice options there for kind of cleaning up your cable management, it's not something you have to go spend a little bit more money on. Some power supplies will sometimes come with some basic zip ties. I'm not the biggest fan of always zip ties because it's very easy to compress and crimp and damage a cable. So I'm a much bigger fan of hook and loop fasteners. Plus you can more easily kind of open them, readjust, and make quick routing path adjustments, as opposed to zip ties, which can be trickier in that respect, right? You do have a 0 dB fan button on there, very straightforward. And there you can see kind of that more kind of top level look. Probably not going to see that when you have it installed, but it is a really good looking power supply. I really do like the aesthetic design on it. I do think it looks really nice. So what do you guys think in terms of the overall design? Quite good, right? But let's go ahead and dive in a little bit deeper and take a look at some of the elements here in terms of the power supply. So we're going to go ahead and first take a look. All of these are going to be 80 plus gold, and they feature high quality Japanese grade capacitors. Now the actual certification and the performance of the actual power topology is actually a bit over spec. So even though they're technically 80 plus gold, cybernetics gold, they're actually over. So that means that they're not kind of just hitting the mark, they're actually quite a bit over the marker. So they're very, very performant, very efficient based power supplies in this respect. One of the key benefits that this gives us is actually outstanding efficiency performance, but also really, really good thermal operation and very quiet operation. Now all of these will come with the larger, more dense ROG heatsinks, and one of the key benefits of the ROG heatsinks is going to be the improved thermal dissipation performance to the internal components. That allows for essentially a longer sustained period before the actual fan even ramps up. In our actually testing, and actually what I think you're going to be seeing, these are the quietest power supplies on the market. They're up there with the Thor series, which have been kind of class leading at being the absolute quietest PSUs that you can get out there. Premium dual ball bearing fans. This just is kind of a factor of being able to improve the overall long-term reliability, the durability of the fan on having a dual ball bearing based design, right? Of course, have that native 12-volt high power connector, which comes included right there, so you're good to go in that respect. The ASUS Aura Sync support, a 10-year warranty. So the 10-year warranty is going to be an upgrade compared to, let's say, like the Prime series, which we talked about last week, which are going to be coming out. Those are featuring an 8-year warranty, but the Tough Gaming Gold are also still a 10-year warranty as well. Okay.
So a nice round out there. Now, let's go ahead and take a look a little bit at the differentiation when it comes to, I think, the fan curves, okay? So we're going to go ahead and take a look here at the fan curves for the models. So if you're kind of wondering, a little bit of a difference right here. So here we can see, here's the 750 watt. Now, pretty much what this is showing you is that it's in a 0 dB operating mode, and that means up to pretty much 50% right here, right? So that's going to be pretty much, 300 plus watts, right? That's actually pretty nominal to the vast majority of system configurations. 350 to about almost 400 watts is what a lot of even on higher end systems, that's what the nominal kind of power draw is going to be. You can pretty much see that it's going to be under 0 dB operating mode. It means the fan doesn't even spin up. From there, it's very impressive that even when you get over here into this 80% load, right, you can still see this is clearly under 10 dB. It's effectively silent. You're not going to hear it. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to really even hear anything up to about 30, even 35 for some people. It's kind of hard to hear. 30 is still essentially pretty much almost silent. So you can pretty much see that this PSU, even when it gets all the way up to 100, it's pretty much silent. So it's very impressive in terms of this. So for me, I think this is a fantastic choice for a lot of people. I know some builders out there, they like to kind of go from that perspective that they think just buy more than they need. It's not really needed. A very good quality power supply is already going to have additional buffer headroom built into it. When you talk about kind of transient spike, right, or excursion, that's already there within the power supply. So you're already going to have the ability of the power supply to kind of support levels that are over that 750 watt, because that's not sustained, right? So keep that in kind of mind. But of course, for the people that just want to purposely have that margin in there, that's the reason why we have, of course, the higher spec model. So you have the 850 watt and you have the 1000 watt. So if we take a look at the 850 watt, you can see pretty similar, same thing, up to 50%. It then goes a little bit more, because it's a little bit louder, right? But still effectively, we're at that 30 for even the 850 watt. The 1000 watt is going to be essentially where you're going to see the most kind of change. But again, here, you're still under the 30 watt. It's super impressive, right? Again, outstanding. If you're really looking for a super quiet PSU experience, the PSU with a Strix Gold is not going to be what you're thinking about. Like, my system's making noise. It's going to be literally some other component in the system that's going to be producing the noise, right? And if you've got other components that you have within your system, then you could pair these up with other very low performing items in terms of noise output to really be able to give you a great experience. So let me go ahead and just bring up the kind of numbers here. Can look at them kind of holistically overall. So we got 750. Yeah, so here we go. So here's kind of all three of them if we want to look at all three at a time. So here's the 750 watt right here. It's the 850 watt. And here's the 1000 watt in terms of the overall fan curves. Okay, so again, all of them support 0 dB operating mode, right? And then they are also all going to essentially be underneath that at or about that 30 dB. So very, very impressive in terms of the overall efficiency. And that, like I said, translates to why they're so quiet, okay? Remus goes, I turned in late, but it seems, yeah, the B760 ProArt Wi-Fi is DDR5. I can't find it on the ASUS site yet. Yeah, so I'm so quick to get out that information. It's before sometimes even our US website has had the chance to fully refresh. So it'll be coming online probably within the next few days as far as the US-based website. We'll have it online listed there. It is listed on the global site, so you can go to the US English global site, and the model should be already listed there, but it'll be coming on the US site shortly. But that is DDR5. For a DDR4 version, it will always have D4 in the model name. When there's no essentially DDR designation in the model name, it's inherently a DDR5 based model. Okay. So let's just see some feedback here. So Michael notes, those look sexy. The ROG Strix PSUs rock. Very cool. Tech goes, always well bit, great components, right? Richard Hidell goes, when does the Thor series get 12 volt high power connections? It already does. All of the Thor P2 models already come in the box with the 12 volt high power cable. The difference is it just doesn't have the native connection there, but keep in mind that in terms of kind of performance, they're still higher end than even these power supplies. They have higher levels of efficiency. They're platinum or they're titanium. They have even more advanced power topology, higher level of extrusion, right? So you're good to go. They're outstanding PSUs, and the cable quality is fantastic on them, and they already come in the box with essentially that cable. So you still have the native 12 volt high power cable. It's just you don't have that native cable on the PSU side, right? It's going from PCI Express, kind of the older connection interface, right, to then the 12 volt high power connector, right? But it's still only one single cable that's going to the power supply. So it's not like you're using the adapter cable where you have like, 3 or 4 PCI Express power cables then going, right? Or something along those lines. So it's still a very clean, right? Will the Thor 2 be the only platinum PSU? Yes, for right now, those are the only platinum models that we're going to offer. So yeah, so gold pretty much will be for the Tough Gaming Gold and for the ROG Strix, and then for the Thor, you'll have the platinum, and then the Thor also goes into titanium, and then the Prime Series power supplies that we also announced, those are also going to be in gold. All right, so that takes care of the ROG Strix Aura series. I do want to quickly show you off just kind of the included cables. I think it's nice to know what you kind of get in terms of some of the cable configurations right here. So you can see that you've got of course, your primary motherboard cable. You're going to have your 2 CPU cables, so that would be like for like dual 8-pin configurations. You of course have the PCI Express Gen 5, the 12 volt high power cable. That's 700 millimeters. This is a bit longer than some of the other manufacturers. Keep in mind that some people don't realize that the longer cable is, the worse the efficiency. So it's always a balancing act from a manufacturer perspective to balance out how you message out your efficiency numbers, because depending on the length of your cables, it's actually sometimes more beneficial to go with a shorter cable, even though in the real world, it's not always beneficial to the user, because to a user, sometimes having just that little bit longer cable can be beneficial. Like having a 610 millimeter versus a 700 millimeter cable could be, a really, really big benefit when it just comes to having just a little bit more to be able to route or bend or kind of go to where you want it to go to, right? But there you go. PCI Express, right, connectors as well, right? You then have your split and straight, right? So I like actually having both sometimes depending on the power supply configurations. This model right here, having the actual 2 side by side can be useful depending on the power supply. And then if you want the cleanest look, these are going to be nice right here. You got your SATA cables, you have a multiplexed SATA cable, and then you've got your Molex, which can still be useful for certain types of peripherals, and then your ARGB cable. Now, I don't have the hands-on cables for the Tough Gaming, for the new ROG Strix Aura, but I do have them for the Tough Gaming, and I'm going to show you the cables here because they're pretty similar. They're a little different, but they're pretty close. So let me go ahead and see if I can bring up the cables here. Give me 1 second if I got them right here. Here we go. Okay. So this is courtesy of our friends, Mr. Matt Lee. I think I got it right here. Yeah. The actual Tough Gaming Series power supplies. So if we take a look at the Tough Gaming power supplies, these are even lower cost than the ROG Strix. So if you're really kind of looking for price to performance to the quality, the Tough Gaming ones are really, really, really hard to beat, in my opinion, regardless of the other competitors on the market. And I unquestionably think that the cable quality that these come with are the best. So these are what we call our fully etched modular cables. They have a really nice clean and feel to them. They offer a nice softness and malleability with still a bit of rigidity to them. They look really, really, really nice. These are very similar to the same cables that we have on the ROG Loki series, right? And so the Loki series you can see right here, and this is for the Tough Gaming Gold. They're both very, very nice. On the ROG series, they're also still a very nice, clean, individually sleeved cable. So they're not like the flat black make cables that you see amongst a lot of the other manufacturers. And even kind of some of these other cables where we talk about this larger 24, which sometimes is just in like this like big sheath, right? Which it's not horrible, right? It's a nice, clean black sheath. But I think that these look much, much nicer. So again, the ROG Strix and the Tough Gaming Gold will come with very nice in-box cables. Now the Thor series do carry the biggest benefit that they also come included with that cable mod coupon. So if you want to be able to get in on getting custom cables or extensions, then it's pretty nice to be able to get the Thor model, which comes with that, that in-box coupon, which it's either 15 or 20%. That's a pretty big savings when you talk about the cost of custom cables that you can go ahead and deduct there. Remus, oh look at this. This is why I love Remus. He pays attention to the details. Capacitor-free cables. There are some manufacturers that don't actually have cables that are capacitor-free, and so that's something they already started to do on many models, including the Tough Gaming Gold, and then also on the Thor series power supplies. And the reason why that can be important is when you get cables like these that you want to be able to bend at their ends, and if they have an inline capacitor, the inline capacitor can actually sometimes you can bend it, you could damage the capacitor, and even just sometimes making it harder to bend, and you get kind of these little bumps that exist. It's just not that great for a look or overall feel. So it's just a nice kind of premium attention to detail that you get where there's no inline capacitor cables. Take for instance, like on a Thor 1600 watt, some of the other 1600 watts on the market have inline capacitors, right? And we don't have inline capacitors, and it just looks nicer. Right. Michael Braun goes, yum, reminds me of black licorice candy. Beautiful cables. Thank you so much. Very, very cool. So, yeah. Hey, Lloyd, happy to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us on the stream. All right, so that takes care of the ROG STRIX AURA GOLD series power supplies. Let's go ahead and show you just finalized pricing that we have right here for those models. So coming in, again, we're gonna have 3 models that are gonna be launching. It's gonna be the ROG STRIX AURA GOLD, 1000 watt, 850 watt, and 750 watt. So that's gonna be coming in at $229, $199, and $189, okay? So very reasonable, actually, in terms of the overall pricing for those models. Let me see here if I can show you. I think I might have it here. Give me one second. If I have it over here. Do I have it over here for the... Let me see. I want to see if I have the... If I can give you guys the quick kind of call-out differential for those that might be wondering on the Tough Gaming series versus the ROG STRIX AURA series. I'm gonna have to go back here to the Tough Gaming, see if I have that one. Put it side by side. If not, I can just bring them up on the website and show you guys. But I was trying to see if I can show you a little bit easier visually. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Yep, I have it here. So again, I think probably for the vast majority of you, it probably makes sense to probably consider the Tough Gaming Gold. But if you have like a PSU shroud that's visible, right? Because of course not all PSU shrouds are going to be visible. Some are not visible. Then I think that the Tough Gaming Gold is going to probably make more sense for the majority users. And then if you have something that's visible and you want to be able to take advantage of that RGB lighting, you care supremely about the acoustics of it, then of course the ROG Strix is going to be great. But keep in mind the Tough Gaming Gold are still also very, very quiet. So it's not like either power supply is loud, right? Definitely the ROG Strix is not loud, but still just for kind of reference, you don't have to be kind of concerned with noise with either one. So if we take a look here at pricing, let's go ahead and take a look right there. Here's the Tough Gaming Gold. All right, so yeah, there we go. Kind of more or less. Okay, so there you have it. So you compare. So the 1000 watt is 190 versus 230. So Tough Gaming Gold 1000 watt, ROG Strix 1000 watt is 230. The ROG Strix 850 is 200, and then the 850 is a 150, right, for the Tough Gaming Gold, right? And then for the 750, 750 is 120. And then the 750 is going to be 190. So those are your 3 price points, right, for the Tough Gaming Gold. And again, Tough Gaming Gold, really, really good option, right? Already very quiet, those really nice fully etched modular cables, that nano-coated PCB, the high-quality fan solution, the really nice ID design on there. Very, very competitive option that I think is a fantastic. And then again, if you just want something to go to that next level, you can consider the ROG Strix AURA Gold series, all right? Both, again, Gold, 80 plus, and also ATX 3.0. So they both come included with the 12-volt high-power cables, all right? Thanks for the feedback, Remus. I'll definitely pass that feedback over to our team in terms of that. Yeah, I think, you know, ultimately, of course, you can easily go ahead and disable that. But yeah, I understand sometimes wanting to have that flexibility of like an easy physical switch to disable the lighting element, right? All right, so I think that takes care of essentially all of our new items that we had to cover on there. So I'm gonna go ahead and get ready to load up our PCDIY Builder Spotlight, guys. If you guys have any questions that I haven't touched on yet, feel free to go ahead and drop them in the chat while I go ahead and load up here our PCDIY Builder Spotlight. So give me 1 second here. All right, let me get these images loaded in here. Okay, here we go. Perfect. All right. Open this up here. Any idea on the price of the SSDs? I'm not sure what SSDs are you referring to. The only SSD that we manufacture is the SQ7, which we have not released in North America. I don't know if you will release it in North America. I can tell you we are working on a PCI Express Gen 5 based SSD, but I don't have more details to give you, so you're just gonna have to make sure to keep it tuned. This is the SQ7, but again, this has not been released in North America. We may bring it in, it's still under discussion, so I can't tell you as far as that. So I'm not sure as far as what is you're asking about in terms of pricing for an SSD. So if you can give me a little bit more information, I can try to go ahead and answer your question, okay? All right, let me go ahead and finish just bringing this up here. Okay, I think we got the build here. All right, perfect. So all right, so first build that we're going to go ahead and do here on the PCDIY Builder Spotlight is going to be from Modding Café. If you guys know, I'm a huge fan of Modding Café. Definitely for me, you know, unquestionably one of the best real builders and modders in the game, right? When it comes to their overall kind of the fit, finish, polish, the execution, the creativity, really, I think just one of the absolute best in the game. It's always just a pleasure to be able to see their work because it brings on so many details that it's kind of like when you're looking through the imagery, when you're looking through their video, you can kind of just see the time, the effort, the craftsmanship, the care that's been taken to really be able to offer something that's just amazing. So, you know, for me, absolutely one of my favorite builders to be able to highlight when they have actually a new build to be able to go ahead and show off on here. Let me see. Any plans? I think your question right here is it goes, any plans for an AMD based, I'm assuming that's what you mean, an AMD based ProArt based graphics card. Right now we have not committed to making, let's say, like a ProArt 7900 XT or 7900 XTX. It's a possibility. Right now we're not limiting, let's say, the ProArt development. Originally the ProArt series was kind of done as a collaboration with some of our system integrator partners, and the primary feedback that our system integrator partners want is they wanted an NV centric solution. That's predominantly because they see that the highest level of kind of prosumer demand when it comes to ISV acceleration. ISV is going to be important for applications, so you could be talking everything kind of like DaVinci Resolve to like Revit to 3D Studio Max to Maya. So many of these programs, NVIDIA has outstanding kind of partner support and kind of implementation for acceleration within those programs. Then AMD has done a great job at improving those things and will continue to improve upon those things. But for kind of the target use, the highest demand was NVIDIA. So that was our focus at designing and developing a SKU that met that kind of feedback demand from our system integrator partners and then from our users. Now that being said, we do actively produce both AMD and NVIDIA based graphics cards. So there is definitely the opportunity in the future we could produce a ProArt based AMD based graphics card. But as of right now, we don't have an immediate plan to launch a ProArt based version, but we're definitely going to be collecting feedback once this card gets out into the retail channel. So within about the next month or so, we are definitely going to want to see feedback from the community on, you know, do they like the cards that we designed in terms of their overall kind of their performance, their feature set, you know, the aesthetic, the dimensional designs, and a lot of that feedback has been really positive. But of course, we're just going to wait to see what you know, the community and the broader set of adopters pass back to us and whether or not they want to see maybe other cards, because we've also had some feedback that people want, can you try to achieve that in a 4090? We do have a prototype design for a ProArt 4090 that gets even more challenging because the big benefit of the ProArt was that there was going to be much more compact, and it is. It's only a 2.5 slot based card, and it's quite a bit smaller than our other 4080 or 4070 Ti based cards. 4090 would still definitely be smaller, but it might still be a bit bigger than, of course, the current 4080 or the 4070 Ti, right? Any plans for a new GT301? Yes, it won't be a GT301 replacement, but we do have a targeted kind of, let's say, around $100 chassis. It's going to be the new GT302, and I'm super excited for it. It's probably my favorite chassis that we're going to produce all year. I'm a really big fan of this chassis. I've had the hands hands-on opportunity to be able to test it out. I think it's gonna be fantastic. If you want something that's built really well, huge amount of flexibility in terms of how you can actually work with the chassis, will not break the bank, it's going to be a great choice. I'm really excited about this. So the GT302, it's going to be coming soon, hopefully in the next quarter. So in Q3, you'll hopefully see more information on the GT302. So keep tuned. All right. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this build, guys, and see what we got going on here. Again, this is from Modding Café, right? Go ahead and bring it up here. All right. So right off the bat, you can just kind of see it just already looks like something entirely different, right? This really, really cool box, right? You have this kind of transparency, the color theme vibe that's going on here with this kind of almost kind of a Tron kind of color scheme, right? Where you got the silver, you have the light kind of teal and blue that's in there, a little bit of kind of subtle RGB kind of contrast lighting that's happening there. I really love the off-axis tilt that you got here on terms of kind of the stand that it has. I think it's a really cool vibe and how it's subtly illuminated, kind of working up against, of course, all that metalwork. And one of the really brilliant things in terms of Modding Café is so much of what they're doing is all fabricated, right? And so they're doing so much of this stuff right here in terms of kind of customizing so many design elements, from fabricating and designing the chassis to then customized distributions to, you know, specialized layouts. So many cool things that you're really kind of seeing so many elements of a masterclass builder and modder and fabricator kind of come together right here, right? But let's go ahead and continue forward. So one of the other really cool things that I really love right here is look at the kind of the subtle play that you have in terms of kind of texture and depth and contrast, right? And so already right here, you can see that you've got the flat kind of diffused material where there's a little bit of a kind of smoke tint that's occurring to the acrylic material right there. Then you have the holes. Then you have here, right here, some kind of cool just textural contrast, which it will play with your eyes when you're looking at it. You're kind of not going to see everything's not just flat, right? It's got some depth and it's got some contrast, and I really, really love that. It's just a nice attention to detail to be able to give a little bit more vibe to the build, right? So as we now take a look at the system a little bit more holistically, right, and kind of more from the computer-oriented side, this is where it kind of really starts off to come together. So you can actually see right here, here's the actual motherboard. It looks really, really cool in terms of just the board layout. It's off access. I love that he left this area exposed right here. So the poly mode display, just a little bit of subtle, really cool in terms of adding a visibility. I love the block choice. This block choice right here to go with this kind of semi-diffused look with just a little bit of kind of a glowing light to it, has a really, really cool vibe to it. Really cool placement right here for the PSU. That's a Thor PSU, and you have the wattage display, then a secondary display right there. I love just that kind of right there, that color play that you have in there, that not match up all the colors. Purposely, you're getting a little bit of what's called color blocking. So it's an alternate color, which in itself actually reinforces the other colors and gives you some natural contrast, which is really, really cool. Normally for me, I'm not always the biggest fan of a vertical mount design, but I love vertical mounts when they're kind of holistically part of the entirety design. So, you know, H2O Computers is here, Sniff Computers is here. They're some of the best guys that I've seen that they kind of think about the total design, and when they present it to you, it has kind of a more cohesive look and feel than to just kind of randomly stick a vertical GPU in the build. And not to say it can't look good, but you know, sometimes I think it just eats up way too much space. Here you can kind of feel that form is meeting function, and it goes with the overall design, the look and feel of the system, right? The block is adding other layers of translucentness and kind of diffusion and some color contrast here against the kind of the darker tones that are right here. So really, really cool. I think just overall give it a really, really cool vibe in terms of the overall look and feel. And then you can kind of start to get into just all the subtle details, all the little areas right here where you see so much beautiful work. I mean, the finishing work is always so nice in terms of what they bring to the table, what he brings to the table in terms of that work, right? Where it looks pretty much like you're dealing with like a finished chassis, a finished product where everything is machined really nicely, machined really cleanly, and polished off to make you feel like you're looking at a final product, right? And I just love kind of the depth and the contrast that we have right here, right? All these little patterns, right? Which just kind of make you feel like you're almost seeing like a little bit of a layered kind of almost mirrored effect, right? It's really cool. When you go onto the inside right here, some really cool stuff in terms of how this is all integrated in, right? So you've got the CPU block, then you got those hard lines that run into that integrated customized distro, right? Which is part of the chassis. That's a really cool just vibe, right? Which it just gives it a really clean look, right? Because you have minimal tubing running everywhere. You don't have to have all these kind of varied bends and runs, but it just adds a really, really cool vibe, right? Love the overall kind of just look and feel. Let's see, Michael Braun knows materialized holographic. HO Computers goes, the build, I'm assuming build, yes, the build is beautiful, and I would 100% agree, right? Michael notes, has almost a Tron vibe to it. Yeah, I would definitely agree. Really cool, right? I like this one. The Borg has landed, right? Nice box. Yeah, I definitely agree. It's a really, really cool vibe in terms of the overall look and feel. And that base design is really slick, right? And so again, looking at it from different angles, it's so cool because it doesn't have like a bad angle. You can just look at it from different ways, and it just has a really cool kind of vibe to it that I think works really, really well. So just beautiful work. And again, this is where I was talking about where, again, all these subtle things, you didn't have to do this, right? You could just see right here where all this is extra work, right? You could have just literally gone flat and it would have made the fabrication process much simpler, but it would have taken away some textural element, something that is just giving it, you know, that contrast, that detail, and just a little bit more kind of aesthetic flair, which I think is really, really nice, right? All these things, I just love the way that they turned out. This right here too, this beautiful kind of just nice kind of silhouette lighting that's on the bottom. Really beautiful. And the top, how it plays off, you can imagine like in the dark how much the system kind of is going to pop, because you're going to have this nice kind of balance of having areas that are kind of bright and bold and other areas which are a little bit darker, and it just kind of has like this kind of glowing box, right, kind of vibe. It's really, really cool. I really dig it, right? So overall, just a fantastic build. You know, there's not much to say when you're talking about Modding Cafe. It's never, is it going to be bad? It's just how many thumbs up you're going to give it, because you know the quality of the work that they do is always on a masterclass level. The fit, the finish, the policy execution, the cohesion of the theme, I think is also such a big part of their builds, right? Where you can definitely see that when they're really thinking about the overall vibe, right, it really has a consistent, cohesive vibe, and that's always a challenge. The best builders will tell you kind of getting everything to feel like it's part of the same thing. That's one of the trickiest things to do, and that's where so much time gets spent on. And for us, that's something we spend a huge amount of time. Take, for instance, like a ROG, where we want to spend, you know, like if you get a Hyperion and you get a motherboard and you get a Strix card and you get a Ryuo Gen, they all feel cohesive, and we really think we've done an amazing job to give you that kind of synergy and that consistent experience where all those products kind of tie in together. And here, this build just feels like one cohesive thing, which is pretty sweet, right? So beautiful work just across the board here, guys. Let me go ahead and focus in on an image here. Let me see if I can go ahead and bring up the specific stats here on the information that we've got for the build. So give me 1 second. I don't even know on which image. It's like what it makes sense to kind of leave on here, right? So many kind of cool parts of this build right here. Let's go. Maybe side by side. Yeah, I think this is pretty good. Okay, so let's go with that, and let me bring up here. Okay, all right, there we go. Okay, so there we go, and let me see here. And I think overall, they just noted, right, that the customer was looking for, you know, something that had a different vibe to it, right? And again, if you guys are not checking out their socials, you know, we have featured quite a number of their different builds. And again, you know, I think the last one we featured, did we feature the Velociraptor build? The Velociraptor build, again, just to give you an example of kind of just some of the other work that they do, that's another PC build. I mean, look at that thing. It's so cool, right? I mean, it's just, again, it's kind of just some next level stuff that they do there in terms of, you know, what they're bringing to the table, right? Sorry, hold on 1 second there. There we go. Okay, so let me see here. If I have the submission form, I don't think I actually have the submission form here. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I don't have actually the specification information there, but I think based on what we can see there, that's going to be a Maximus Z790 because it's got the Polymo based display, and then you've got some G-Skill based RGB based memory in there. GPU, I'm assuming it's probably going to be, you know, 40 series probably 4080, 4090, just the class of the hardware that you got right here. Thor series power supply, that's the P2 bias model that's also in there. And then you know, just a beautiful bits power based you know, fittings also, I think, that we see predominantly within that build as well. So just amazing work. I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys a link there to the Modding Cafe website. I think if you guys are checking us out on, of course, their on YouTube, you can also check out their YouTube channel and check out their website. It's a great space to be able to go ahead and, I think, just get some influence and some inspiration, right? Some amazing stuff right there. It is I like that. It is a camouflage transformer. That's a pretty cool one, right? It's the details and personal ASUS, just lovable. It's blink LED in the dark. Yeah, I think very cool. Looks like something from the 2050s. Love the base. Yeah, I would agree. I think that the base is a really cool kind of design element that they did. It's evolved it, right? So again, man, just massive thumbs up. Amazing work, right? Through and through. Another just masterclass build. It's amazing to always be able to feature your work here on the PCDIY Builder Spotlight. And again, I think one of the absolute best in the game. An amazing build. So I think I've got one more for the PCDIY Builder Spotlight. I'm going to go ahead and jump into our submission forms, though. Actually, so let me go ahead and just pull one from the submission form. I'm just going to go pull one right now. Going to go into the web. Go into the cloud, guys. Wish me luck. All right, I'm going to go ahead here, and we'll just pull one in from the submission form. Hopefully next week, before I head over to LTX, which will be at the end of the month, I'm going to finish sorting through all the pending kind of backlog that we have through, and we'll probably have a little bit of an expanded focus on the PCDIY Builder Spotlight, get the remaining submissions that haven't gotten highlighted through. So if you have one that you submitted and haven't got to it, hopefully by next week and the week after that, we'll get them kind of all taken care of. So give me 1 second here. Let me see what we got. Ooh, Kevin. Oh, excuse me. I think I drank that water just a little bit too fast. Kevin submitted his glacial build. Ooh, that might be a kind of cool one. I like, because like he did that a little bit differently. Some people kind of go crazy with the glacial. I think you did a glacial kind of the way I would do a glacial, right? Just kind of take advantage of kind of the nice integrated kind of design of it, right? But not go super kind of crazy in terms of kind of the look and feel of everything. Oh, no, I do have the submission form. Okay, so Modding Cafe, let me actually go back here. He did actually finish getting it to me. Fantastic. Okay. So let me bring that back up. Okay, and that's there we go. Where do I have it? Too many windows. All right, here we go. So, yeah, so let's see right here. Does the build have a theme? So the theme is just the cube and to show more hardware and light. So I think that makes sense, right? It's perfect, exactly, right? This is about a play of lighting, right, and a cube, right? 3 words to describe the build. Just a unique build, right? So I think 100% this is really unique. The build's name, it's the cube, right? In terms of the hardware, it was pretty close, right? So yeah, 13900 KS. It is an ASUS 4090. It's in there, 64 gigabytes in terms of memory. Right, you could argue, right, you know, ideally for maximum performance you would only go with 2 DIMMs, right, so that you could have a higher clock frequency. But I think for the look and feel, right, the 4 DIMMs kind of just gives you that nice kind of consistent lighting pattern, right? Then there's going to be 2 Samsung 90 PCIe NVMe M.2 based SSDs, a 1 terabyte and a 2 terabyte. It's a Thor P2 1600 watt. Definitely much more than you need. And then an ROG Maximus C790 Hero. And then, as I noted, right, all the pretty much water cooling hardware is going to be from Bits Power, with the exception of, like I said, the customized elements like the distro, which he went ahead and did. Total cost for this guy was $9,200, which actually to me, if that's accounted for his time left for an Aber, is actually, I think, a steal, because again, an extreme amount of time and work to go into the timing, the planning, the production, the fabrication, all that work right there, right? What aspect of the build are you most proud of? You know, it's nothing. He's you know, it's not most proud of anything, which to me isn't crazy, right? You go like, how do you not give yourself a pat on the back for this? Just, you know, maybe when you're just working at that top level, right, you're just like, it's just another one. I'm just, you know, brushing the shoulder off, right? But a fantastic build. How long did it take to put together the system? 36 days, so a little bit over a month. That to me in itself is showing you again the amount of time and effort that goes into the, you know, the design, the planning, the fabrication, the fitment testing, all of that stuff that you have to get doing. So what is the system used for? It was just a build for a friend, right? So general kind of use. And one of his favorite features is he really loves the OLED display that's on the Thor series. So fantastic job again, man. Amazing work. Very, very cool. Thank you so much for sharing that over. Hey, Jack, take care, man. No problem, man. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay cool, man, if it's going to be hot in your region. All right, so let me go ahead and finish bringing up here this other submission that we're going to get here. So let me see here. Let me see. What are you going to bring up? Let's go. I think this one kind of cool. Do we want to do that? I think we can do that. Let's see. Let's just go with Kevin's here, and then we'll, like I said, we'll finish going through the rest. So let me go ahead and download these here. And if you guys want to go ahead and submit your build for the PCDIY Builder Spotlight, all you need to do is just be part of our ASUS PCDIY group. Head over to the submission form. It's under our featured posts, and that will allow you to go ahead and submit your build for essentially an opportunity to have it featured here on the stream. So it's a very simple process, and you'll be good to go. We generally do try to feature builds every week here, depending on just, you know, schedule and amount of products we have covered. You know, sometimes it's a few builds, sometimes I usually try to do at least like 3 to 5. Just depends on kind of the schedule and whatnot, right? But I've got the submission form up here, so let's go ahead and get ready to cover this one, and let's see what the name is. Hopefully, I don't know Kevin, if Kevin is still here in the chat in the stream today, but Kevin, we're going to do yours. All right, so this is going to be from Kevin, and what's the name here? Okay, got it. All right, and all right, let's go ahead and take a look at Kevin's build right here. Ooh, I like it. He gave me both RGB lighting off and RGB lighting on. All right, very, very cool. All right, Kevin's still here. All right, guys, you can let him know. All right, here we go. So let's go ahead and take a look right here. So he's got, right off the bat, we can see this is going to be a custom water-cooled base system. He's actually using a Glacial. I think he upgraded from an Apex, if I remember correctly, and he got actually the Glacial. I think he got this like on super promo. I think PGPC posted about this in the PCDIY group when Newegg was busting out of these on clearance, on super clearance. So it was like, I don't remember. I think it was like less than $250 or something like that, which is pretty crazy because the Glacial, you know, of course, is over $1,000, right? It was our most expensive motherboards that we ever produced in terms of the overall cost. And part of the big cost is that they featured this full, what's called an Uber block. Essentially, it covers the entire motherboard, right? So it covered the CPU, the VRM, the M.2, the LAN, right? It's all there in this full machine block. Pretty crazy. A really, really cool design, right? And it comes in a massive box. I mean, it's very weighty. Really, really cool design. So I believe he upgraded that. He has this all inside of here. You can see the Helios, which is our kind of our high-end chassis, but it's before the Hyperion. Still allows you to have up to dual 360s in there. You can see he's got a dual cooled radiator configuration in there. So he's got for the CPU and for the GPU in there. He's maximizing the total space. I'm digging it. I like it. Just clean, performant, focus. I love the soft tubing in there. And I actually like the kind of the silver to black contrast. I know some people might be like, hey, you could kind of complement the two and go with something that's more color themed. But I like that actually the board pops a little bit. And I think when a little bit of the lighting comes on, that's going to give us a little bit more contrast, right? Which I think will actually work out. But this is really nicely, cleanly done. It's actually very much kind of, like I said, my type of build, my type of vibe that I would still be having here. Hey, Aline, we don't actually cover any of the SPG components on this stream. We only focus on PCDIY components, but if you have any questions regarding the ROG Ally, I think there was a post in the ROG Discord regarding from our team that's covered actually our kind of ongoing internal assessment on that. And if you have any questions, of course, feel free to reach out to our services support team. You can go and you can contact them via live chat, or you can go through email, and they can work with you on assisting you on whatever your issue might be, okay? So here we kind of switch over into the lighting mode configuration. I really like the actual look and feel right here. I like that, again, you have a little bit of that kind of contrast there with the nice lightness from the board, right? And then you've got a little bit of that accent color right here, which is on the integrated, of course, Uber block. Then you've got the lighting on the DIMMs, just a little bit of lighting there from the GPU, and then just a little bit there from the integrated pump and res, right? You then tie that in, of course, also with the lighting scheme that's also there on the power supply, and it's kind of cool just to give it a little bit of a balance. He didn't go crazy, right? Just went with clean black fans on the rest of the kind of cooling configuration. I like that vibe. It simplifies also the cable management. Also, generally, the best performing fans are usually non-RGB based fans. You know, we do have some very good performing ARGB fans, like our Tough Gaming fans, like this one right here. But overall, as a whole, if you're looking for simplicity and performance, still can't go wrong with just a standard non-ARGB fan, especially something like our XF120s. Those are a great choice, but of course, there are a lot of great options here. And again, I really dig in the soft tubing. It's the lowest cost, the easiest to maintain, easiest to route, and most forgiving and flexible in terms of just working with it. So I'm a huge fan of it there. So digging those vibes, digging those vibes. Like this just overall look. The cool little, of course, live dash display. It's a nice little thing to see here. I like also that you did install the DIMM.2. So question, Kevin, did you actually use the DIMM.2 add-in card? For those of you wondering, some people always ask is like, why is there only 3 DIMM slots? It's actually a slot for the DIMM.2 add-in card, which actually allows you to add up to 2 M.2 SSDs, but vertically. And the cool thing is you can imagine here on this type of motherboard is, especially if you're water cooled, it could be quite hard to get access to the onboard M.2 slots, right? So the cool thing is having the DIMM.2 is you could just literally shut off your system, remove the DIMM.2 card, add them in, and then pop them back in. So it's a really simple and streamlined process when we innovated on implementing essentially these DIMM.2 into our higher end motherboards. So it's a really, really cool design. H2O Computer says ZMT is life. Give some love there to Kevin, going nice build. I definitely agree. Michael Brown says, yes, I dig that light and soft tubing. I would definitely agree. Looking good right there. And again, really nice job just on the clean, simple cable management. Everything's routed really nicely, cleanly, and effectively. Again, my kind of build where you're not overcomplicating anything. This is kind of cool right here, Kevin. This is a little bit different right here. It looks like you've got a little bit of an IO breakout cable down there. Did you do that to like add like a pass-through USB or something like there? That's kind of interesting right there, right? Michael also notes right there, he goes, yes, I have a music library on there. My SaberNet 4 terabyte is under the monoblock. So yeah, so that's cool. So as he noted, so he's got the 4 terabyte here, and then he has other files that are on the M.2 SSDs there on the DIMM.2. That's pretty cool. And Michael, who also has I believe an extreme board is what he has, is he goes, I love the DIMM.2. It's so easy. Need Gen 5 and 2 slots for M.2. Yeah, it's really cool. Gen 5 is only on X570E. That's been introduced because we had to redesign the actual card, and it's actually not even called DIMM.2 anymore. That generation is called the Gen Z.2 add-in card, which actually introduced PCI Express Gen 5 support to the M.2 based SSDs. And then here you can see one of the reasons why Kevin, for me, is just one of my favorite members is he's a huge member of Team ROG through and through. I mean, just look at this. Absolutely insane setup. Really, really cool. I give love right here. Look at this. He's just got a DirectCU graphics card just hanging out right there. There's that B560M-A board that he was talking about. That's actually, I guess, going to be going into that Prime AP201 build that he's going to be doing for a friend. But look at that. Everything from the ROG Chariot. He's got his peripherals. He's got his, I think these are triple ROG Swift monitors. He's got his Helios build right there. He's got his laptop. He's got the Spot the X. Plus, I know that he's got his actually emulation-based build in there. So just massive setup. Really, really cool. I mean, you could not ask more from this. This is the reason for me why I think that ROG and ASUS has the absolute best fans in the world. There's literally no other fan group that are so passionate and so supportive of us, and reason why we're at where we're at. So it's fantastic to be able to see something like this. So really, really cool. Oh man, look at that. He's even got the Magnus right there. Look at that. That's so sweet. And he's got his Mercury also in there, the Beltius right there. Rocking just that awesome setup. Look at that. That's the IKEA cup holder. I mean, what more could you ask for? Some awesome just setup right there. Some really cool vibes through and through. So really, really cool. He's got the Claymore. Claymore for me, one of my favorite, of course, keyboards that we have with those ROG NX switches. And I can tell, I think you upgraded these, right? These are the PBT keycaps, right? Total, I think these are the PBT keycaps. They look yeah, better than the standard keycaps on there. And he also switched it up there. He got it on the left hand side, so you still have that more tight ergonomics. And look at that, even the Arion. He's got the Arion right there. I'm loving it. Very cool. So let's just see right here. I have a PCIe bracket adapter to get access to the USB 2 ports on the motherboard. Yep, that makes sense. Okay, very cool. Yep. Let me see right there. And Kevin does note, yes, the PBT upgrade. So in case anybody's wondering, what I'm referring to is the keycaps. The original model didn't ship with PBT keycaps. The newer production model now comes with PBT keycaps already in the box. But for any users that wanted to upgrade to those nicer ROG PBT keycaps, I also have those here on my Claymore right here, which I'm using for the stream. They just, of course, are premium PBT double shot, which means you don't have to worry about shine or fade or a gradation kind of wear over time. They're a great keycap for your RX enabled switches. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Look at this. He's even, of course, got, look at that. That's the, of course, the screwdriver that comes included with the Glacial and, of course, the Extreme series. And then also even like the Cetra IEM earphones. And look, the Clavis. There's the Clavis even right there that comes, of course, with the Extreme. Oh, there's the TWS. Look at that. The TWS is charging on the ROG Throne, which has the wireless charging support. And then, of course, he's got his nice premium audio. He's using some nice shit audio right there. He's got looks like a couple of the couple of the DAC and the amp combination right there stacked. And then, of course, you got to have it that night shot vibes in there, right? Oh, and I think he gave us a little bit of video right here. Oh, let's look at the tour. Let's look at the tour, guys. Dig in the tour. This is the sleeper PC. I know that we've done this one in the past. This was this sleeper PC that has it's all ASUS components in there, but they're like old legacy components in there. I think it's like something like a GTX 780, I think is what he has in there. And then like a Prime Series, B Series board or something like that in there. Awesome setup. I mean, I know for so many people, and give credit where credit's due here, right? I mean, it takes a huge amount of time and effort to be able to commit into doing a system like this. Not everybody can do it overnight. And I can tell you, Kevin didn't do this overnight. He started with one component, another component, and then he's upgraded component and component over time, you know, when, you know, finances and time and everything allow for it, right? And so that's one of the cool things about being a PCDIY builder is that, you know, over time is when you have that flexibility, you can go from one piece to another piece to another piece to be able to get to eventually where you want. Oh, I didn't even notice it. Let me go back there. Look at that right there. Where was it? Right there at the top. It's gonna go. There's the. I saw the spotlight. He had the spotlight on the chassis. It was up there. Yeah, right there. That's the spotlight. You can't buy this anymore, but it's a cool little spotlight. It actually shows like an ROG logo when you have that kind of displayed there. And then, yeah, and then I know he's got his 10G setup, kind of little server, which shares out all his files because he's got the 10G, which he also utilizes there, of course, on his router. Awesome setup, man. That is the vibes. That is an awesome just setup overall with a really cool look and feel. You've done a fantastic job in terms of getting that all situated. So let me go ahead and bring up your submission form right here and we'll take a look. All right, so let's see here. So this is going to be from Kevin. You guys, of course, can ask Kevin anything you're looking for. He's actually a great member of our community and our PCDIY group. So if you're not part of our community, feel free to go ahead and check it out. Right, so does the build have a theme? A grand display of the best ROG hardware bought over the years. Man, I definitely think you nailed it there. What are 3 words used to describe your build? It would be cool, fast, and bright. I would definitely agree with that. It's definitely got those vibes. I really like actually a little bit of color contrast that you have going on there where you got just that little bit of pop coming from the Glacial. And then, like I said, the little bit of the kind of the synthwave colors there with that kind of like purple pink vibe, which complements the black really, really nicely, but not going too crazy on the overall lighting. So in terms of his core build right here, this is running like I said, the Maximus Z790 Glacial. So then he's also got a Core i9 11900K, still fantastic part, all right? And of course, even you can overclock that. You can actually get some pretty nice clock speeds, especially since you've got it all water cooled. He's running, let's see, some G-Skill Trident Z, 4000 MT CL16, 32 gigabytes, then an ROG Strix RTX 3080 Ti, so beastly graphics card in there, also water cooled. He's got an ROG Thor 1200 watt, and then an ROG Helios, the 4 terabyte, right, Rocket 4 Plus, which is the primary drive, which is mounted on the motherboard. Then he's got the ROG Arion S500, which is an external M.2 base SSD, Gladius 3 mouse, the bulkiest keyboard, mouse mat, right? The Claymore 2 for his actual keyboard, the Rakiri Pro for his controller, the Throne, which is the wireless edition, the Qi, the Sennheiser HD800S, so some very, very nice headphones, really great for if you want kind of sharpness and detail. Sharpness might not be the right way to do it because it can be influenced by the amp, but a really, really nice detail and really, really present mid-range in that headphone, really nice. Then he's got, like I said, some shit audio gear, which is powering that, ROG Strix Magnus for his microphone, and then the monitors, let's see, so he's got the PG279QM, that's the 1440p 240 hertz. Then he's got 3 PG278Qs, which are the 1440p 144 hertz, and then the ROG Chariot RGB edition chair, so not the core edition, and then a GT AXE 11000, right? So an absolutely beastly system. What was the budget for the build? $7,000 of ASUS hardware. He's lost the count. I think that's how a lot of enthusiasts are after a period of time. You just kind of stack it over time, right? And you just know, yeah, it cost me some money. What aspect of the build are you most proud of? The great deal of getting the Extreme Glacial for $200. Yeah, so I was actually a little bit over. I said what, $250? He got it for $200, right? Is there anything you would change about the build? I'm waiting to upgrade to the next ASUS hardware for the RTX 4090 and a 14900K. So I guess next generation basic CPUs, right? Is there anything that you would change? How long did it take you to put together your system? About 1 day to reconfigure the custom water loop to accommodate the Gleam Extreme Glacial. That's the great thing about ZMT. Simple, easy, and effective. Plus, he probably didn't have to change too much since he already had it, I think, water cooled before with the Apex. So it was pretty much just having to probably recut that line specific to the Glacial as opposed to having it for the in and the out on the block that would have been on the Apex board, right? So that's the nice thing there. Really, really simple as opposed to like hardline. It would have taken more time to kind of measure, bend, cut, do all that stuff, right? Is there anything that you would want, No, I covered that. What is the system used for? Used for gaming. He loves to play some Halo Infinite, some Starship Troopers Extermination. How do you like that? I thought it was pretty cool. I haven't picked it up, but I wanted to try it out. I think it looked actually pretty fun, pretty interesting. Also New World. And then favorite ASUS function or feature. He's a big fan of ASUS Aura Sync. It keeps the lighting on point. Fantastic, man. So yeah, you killed it, Kevin. You get a thumbs up, man. Great job. Build turned out great, right? I love that. So Michael, love the video. It's a proud daddy. Awesome setup, right? So D Barkis is asking, hey JJ, what do you think of the white Ryuo Gen 360 on a black Hyperion build? Do you think it's off? Also, the RAM is silver, Trident Z5. Yeah. For me, I definitely don't think it's off. I've already seen that kind of build, and we've shown off actually quite a number of kind of like quote unquote panda builds. So taking something like Prime Series boards and then people running black coolers or kind of vice versa. I think that actually can look really good. I know some people, like, they'll look at it and they'll immediately feel that you should color match everything, but I think that sometimes having a nice balance in terms of the contrast works well. So I don't have an issue with it. I think the main thing would probably be is that what GPU, like the GPU I think plays up into kind of taking up that extra color factor. So I think for me in that type of vibe, I probably would go with the card still being horizontally mounted and not vertically mounted, because if you didn't go with a white card, you went with a black card, it would still allow you to have a little bit more exposed of the secondary color on the bottom side of the board. But I think that definitely that color combination can work really well. So I would say totally fine. But I know some people, they always want to kind of color match all the components, but I'm entirely a fan of actually having kind of a more color blocking effect. I think it can work out really well. A-Show Computer says, I did a black and white build in a Hyperion. You can check it out on the build for color contrast look. Yeah, so definitely check out the PCDIY group, or you can check out A-Show Computer's social feeds. He's done a lot of builds with a lot of different art configurations. Also, Daniel Kuba from Tech 505 has done some cool kind of color block builds that I think has turned out pretty well. And his feedback on Starship Troopers. Starship Troopers is fun. Great PvE game to play when I'm tired of PvP. I like that. All right. Sounds good. I might have to check it out. So, man, thanks for the feedback, right? Hey, John, I'm sorry to hear about your feedback. If you've got an issue, definitely feel free to reach out to our service and support team so they can help you out. If you have an actual RMA or case number, you can email me at pcdiy@asus.com and I can relay that over to our service and support team so that they can follow up with you and attempt to see if they can assist you with whatever your issue might be. But again, like I said, you can reach out to our service and support team. You can also ask to escalate out the case for further review if you feel that there's additional items that you want us to be aware of so that we can hopefully help to resolve whatever your issue might be. Keep in mind that, of course, when it comes to anything that might be related to service and support, there is a certain amount of time that is required, right? Whether it's in terms of kind of logistics, in terms of products being received, products being shipped out, or products being in inventory. So there's a number of factors, but definitely, we can work with you to hopefully find a satisfactory resolution. So again, feel free, reach out to our service and support team if you want. Like I said, you can email me case number, RMA number if you have it, and I can definitely send that over to our service and support team to help you. All right, guys, that wraps up our PC DIY Builder Spotlight. It's been fantastic to go ahead and be able to talk about these great builds for that. That pretty much wraps up everything. So if you guys want to talk about more PC DIY hardware, if you have any other questions, comments, or feedback, feel free to go ahead and check us out in the ASUS PC DIY group. If you're checking us out on YouTube or Facebook, it's linked in the description below. Make sure to go ahead and join us there. We've got an amazing community of just about 45,000 members. I'm excited as we move into Q3. We're actually going to be doing, we've got some expanded budget opportunities. So we're actually going to probably be doing some really cool giveaways. Actually going to be hopefully looking for some supplementary members to be able to do actually some community-based reviews, and also maybe look on adding in some members into a special program for some supplemental moderation within the group. So if you're interested possibly in that, feel free to go ahead and let me know, but there'll be a formal post that goes up in that in the not too distant future. So with that, guys, take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your day, and stay cool. All right, guys, see you in the group.